raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome to the Raising Cain Show tonight. We welcome Jim Scott, an all-American talent dedicated to uncovering the truth behind one of the greatest conspiracies in American history. We're not talking about a conspiracy theory anymore. This is a conspiracy fact. And tonight, Jim is going to lay out the facts with some eye-opening insights into something called Operation Zipper, a covert CIA plot that exposes how multiple, and I said multiple, government agencies collaborated in the slaying of not only the 35th president, but also his brother, the Attorney General, RFK. I am still in shock after reading through these files. So folks, it's going to be a long night. We're going to go through everything. I don't want to leave anything out on this. We'll probably cut this video up into a few different sections because it's going to be a long night, but you're not going to want to miss anything in this because it is fascinating. Last week, I interviewed Jim Files, and you guys saw, that interview, and I think it was very compelling. Tonight, we're going to see the receipts on a lot of that, and I think you guys are going to find that what we see tonight gives credence to everything that he said and the whole grassy knoll, the CIA's involvement and everything. Jim Scott's going to delve into the role of James Files, and he was a CIA mercenary, a Chicago mob hitman. I know him just barely after meeting him last week, but Jim Scott knows him very well, and he's talked with him and interviewed him on multiple occasions. He's going to reveal how he was paid $30,000 by the CIA's handlers, notably David Atlee Phillips, to fire the fatal shot from the infamous grassy knoll. Scott will expose the shocking web of corruption connecting the CIA, the Department of Defense, the FBI, and former CIA Director Alan Dulles in this meticulously orchestrated operation. Adding to this explosive revelation, Scott's going to discuss claims that Hillary Clinton paid law enforcement to attempt to kill James Files, aiming to suppress his knowledge of CIA drug operations that were tied to the Clintons. So we've got a lot of stuff to cover tonight, and I want to thank everybody for joining the show. With that, Jim, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
So I guess a good place to start is, who are you? And tell folks, a little bit about your history and your background and how you got involved in researching this stuff, because I think it's important. You have a pretty, incredible story of your own and background that I think gives credence to both your experiences and also your knowledge and ability to be able to interview people.
Okay, I can start and skim through half my life in about a minute.
All right, I'm going to bring some pictures up here that we already have kind of set up here. So give me 1 minute. You can go ahead and start talking, and I'll pull those pictures.
I just if there was anything, if I was going to introduce to somebody, and I'm looking through the screen at, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would be wonderful friends if I could reach out and shake your hand right now. So I'm going to talk to the audience like it's one person. I'm Jim Scott. I was born in Bradenton, Florida. I lived there till I was 9 years old, moved to Lynchburg, Virginia, was raised in the mountains of Virginia, graduated from Brookville High School, was blessed to be the state champion in the high hurdles and nationally ranked. I got a scholarship. I was a National Honor Society student and got a scholarship to the Citadel for track and field, and ran track at the Citadel. Got into the Marine Corps officer program there. There's a picture of me. That's on a Friday afternoon, I think, parade at the Citadel. I was a cadet captain, O Company commander my senior year, and that's my little guide on. I'm blocking out my guide on there, which I think was Don Grosick at the time, and he, I think, retired as a colonel from the Marines. If you want to keep flipping through the pictures, that leaps ahead to Iraq. That's an RPG. I was in Iraq working with the Kurdish people in northern Iraq. That was an RPG we captured. That's a cool weapon. I fired a bunch of them. But anyway, I graduated from the Citadel, went to flight school, became a helicopter pilot. I flew the CH-46, that camouflage frog back there. We called them the PHROG, right? And the frog was built in the 60s. And I flew them on and off for 10 years. I did a ground tour with 1st Battalion, 8th Marines as an air officer. And that's kind of one of the last pictures taken of me. I was a major at the time. And I was at a reserve unit here in Lynchburg. And one of the enlisted men came down the hall and he said, "Major, you need to go to sick bay." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "You got to get a shot." I said, "For what?" And he said, "Anthrax." I said, "I haven't been exposed to anthrax." And he said, "Well, you have to get a shot or you're going to get court-martialed." Well, at the time, I was a Virginia State trooper. I said, "You're kidding me." And he goes, "No." He said, if you don't go get the shot, you're going to get some kind of, NJP, or, you're going to be court-martialed for not taking it. Well, I didn't know the Marine Corps anything. And I was kind of fed up with, kind of some of the way stuff went. And literally, I just went out and got my state police card and left. I quit and went home. And that was the end of my Marine Corps career. I wasn't going to get an anthrax shot or be court-martialed, and they couldn't court-martial me if I quit. So I just walked away from it. And, I had probably had credit for 16 years. And I'm not going to get any kind of Marine Corps pension or anything because, I walked away from it. But, it seems an injustice to tell somebody they're going to be court-martialed if they don't take a medical shot that's unproven, and literally.
I got stuck with that. Unfortunately, I was stationed in Korea at the time, and not only did they get me the one time with anthrax, but I had all 8 boosters. And there's some real interesting research that is out there. There's a few lawsuits, of course. They're trying to hide the information behind it, but I think there's a lot of people that ended up with autoimmune disorders, myself included, because of that.
Yeah, I met. It's a long story, but in a civilian job years later, I was in North Dakota, and I met guys that were in a reserve unit from North Dakota that went to Iraq, that were forced to get some shots, and they didn't know what they were. They were told they were anthrax and some other things, and they came back, and a bunch of them had children with birth defects. I think that's a tragedy, but I avoided that and have 2 healthy girls. But anyway, I wanted to talk about it. It showed the picture of me in my trooper uniform. Yeah. I was standing beside George Bush's limo. That was at the D-Day Memorial in right Bedford, Virginia, right there. George W. Bush, the son, he came down to dedicate the D-Day Memorial. It's in Bedford County. It's a memorial to Operation Overlord. And I was part of the security detail with the Secret Service. So I was within, pistol range of the President of the United States with, with a loaded gun. And, I've been trusted to do that on 3 or 4 occasions. So, I guess you can trust me if I can be close to the president with a gun. I suppose they trusted me. But anyway, I've been close to Bill Clinton a couple times. And one of the Secret Service guys that I knew asked me, he said, "Do you want to get a photograph of President Clinton? He's going to come right by here." He was playing golf at the Robert Trent Jones golf course up in near Manassas, Virginia, getting ready for the President's Cup Pro-Am tournament. And I said, "What would I do with a picture of me and Bill Clinton? What am I going to frame that? No." So I couldn't stand the guy and have less respect for Hillary. So anyway, both of them should be in jail, in my opinion. But
without a doubt, without a doubt,
anyway,
we're going to get into some of the reasons why too a little bit later tonight.
But so anyway, this whole thing started for me when I was a state trooper. I saw James Files' video, Confession of an Assassin. It was available. What we're going to talk about tonight, some of it, not the Operation Zipper stuff, but a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight was available in a video from Blockbuster, like in the late 90s. You know what I mean? We're talking, 30 years ago, and so I watched the video. I thought he was telling the truth. He mentioned in there, there was some talk about Johnny Roselli, the mobster, was a liaison with the CIA in Virginia. And I figured if there were meetings between the mob and the CIA in Virginia involving the planning to kill President Kennedy, of course, that was like a felony, like it was like the crime of the century, right? And it gave us an opportunity to open the case and just investigate his claims. And so I wanted to go to Statesville Prison and interview James. I wanted to get him immunity from prosecution. In a previous video with, I think, Michael Jaco, I called it diplomatic immunity. I just misspoke. It's immunity from prosecution, and so that he could tell the truth about what happened and what he was involved with. And so I looked into it. I talked to one of the state police reps above me and above my chain of command and said, hey, I got this video and I think this guy's telling the truth about the Kennedy assassination and it involves crimes in Virginia. Could we look into it? He said, I'll get back to you. So he goes and talks to apparently a lieutenant at headquarters who apparently called the FBI. And then, the next thing I heard was, just drop it or else, bad things could happen because it's a federal case. It's closed. It doesn't need to be reopened. It's Lee Harvey Oswald, 3 shots from behind, case closed. And I don't buy that. So, I just kind of forgot about it. And a week or two later, somebody at the office told me, I went in to just check my mailbox before a shift or something. And somebody told me, they said, hey, did you hear what happened to Lieutenant so-and-so up at headquarters? And I said, no, what do you mean? And they said, man, he committed suicide. I said, what? They said, yeah, they said, supposedly the FBI came down to his office and started asking questions. And they said that they claimed that he had been like downloading kiddie porn or something on his state police computer. And I said, you kidding me? And this is speculation on my part. This is just the rumors I heard in the office at the state police. They said, no, they said they suspended him and sent him home and all that kind of stuff. And then like that night or the next day, they find him dead in the woods behind his house and said he shot himself with his state police pistol. I said, you're kidding me. And I knew the guy. When I was at the academy, he was a first sergeant. And, I found it preposterous almost. He was kind of a ladies' man. You know what I mean? Handsome, tall, muscular guy and married, beautiful blonde wife and, big house and, doing good as a lieutenant in the state police. Why would he be involved in kiddie porn? I mean, that didn't make any sense at all to me. I didn't.
Yeah. Why would you do that on your work computer when, could
right.
just
Yeah.
do it
Crazy.
on your home? It seems pretty clear to me what happened there.
Yeah, no state trooper would do that. I mean, it's just crazy. Even, so anyway, so the guy apparently, was, the rumor was the FBI came down and approached, I guess, the colonel or the internal affairs and said, hey, this guy's downloading kiddie porn to his computer. And they sent him home and then they find him dead behind his house. And I personally, I suspect, just from my investigative mind that he might've been murdered by either the CIA or the FBI. I mean, it's crazy to think that, but that's what it looks like to me. But
anybody that thinks that's crazy, they're not going to think that after they hear what gets revealed tonight, because what this Operation Zipper did when I read it was basically it makes you question everything you've ever been told. And, you begin to realize that a lot of the so-called conspiracy theories, there may be some truth to them, and and you need to relook at it, because, and I'm generally a pretty skeptical person when it comes to, I like to use Occam's razor, right? Whatever's the most easiest thing to happen is probably what did happen. And but this, you're going to find out tonight, folks, some really shocking things, including people involved that I wasn't even thinking about.
The testimony, that stuff I'm going to say tonight, is based on eyewitness testimony from James Files and Robert Clayton Buick, both of which were directly associated with Johnny Roselli, the guy that was the liaison between the mob and the CIA to kill John F. Kennedy, and also Castro. So Roselli was a key. He ended up getting cut in half down near Biscayne Bay with a chainsaw and put in a barrel. If you didn't know that, they found his body in a barrel floating around in the Biscayne Bay before he could testify before the church committee in the late 70s. Wow. But and so did Charles Nicoletti, and another guy we're going to talk about. Was kind of the lead hitman that was supposed to be the primary shooter to kill Kennedy. He was killed in his car at the Golden Horns restaurant in Chicago. But anyway, so the background was I tried to reopen the JFK case as a trooper and was unsuccessful. And then apparently, one of the guys that called the feds and, revealed that we had this. And I don't think they realized, I'm not sure he told them that you could buy the video for $11 at Blockbuster. So it wasn't like a big secret the state police had, tucked away in a safe someplace. James Files had videotaped his confession, and it had been released to the public. And this is not news. In fact, if they had supported me and we had investigated this, all this stuff that we're going to talk about tonight, except for maybe the Operation Zipper letter, it didn't become public, but it became public like 23 years ago. It was published in a book entitled Regicide. I've got a copy of it right here.
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick here.
Yeah. And regicide is a word that means to kill a king, as opposed to like a homicide. It's the official assassination of John F. Kennedy by Gregory Douglas, with the documentation compiled by Robert T. and it's Trumbull Crowley, the former assistant deputy director for clandestine operations for the CIA. So while he was involved in the planning for Operation Zipper, he had a hand-typed copy of the Operation Zipper document. Now, the whole document is not available. It's 92 pages long. The first couple pages are the cover, the abbreviations page, and the table of contents. The next 5 or 6 pages is the letter that I sent you that really maps everything out. The next 5 or 6 pages were JFK autopsy pictures, the original ones that show him his head blown off, basically. And then the next pictures that go all the way to page 92, from page 27 or 28 all the way to 92, were the NSA intercepts and all the, what do you call that stuff? The counterintelligence information that was compiled by James Jesus Angleton, that were, phone calls and all this kind of stuff that supported the concept. And for people that don't know what Operation Zipper is yet, it was the plan. It's the name of the plan the CIA came up with. And it was very compartmentalized. Like James Files had never heard of it until about 2 years ago. He'd never heard the words Operation Zipper. And he didn't know it had been published in a book or anything like that. But when this stuff came out, I don't know if the CIA tried to buy every single copy of that book or whatever, but it's really, really hard to find. I bought a copy of it about 2 weeks ago, and it's the 4th copy I think I bought. The cheapest one I've ever found is about $50, and I paid $100 for one about a week or so ago on eBay. But if you just type in that title, Regicide by Gregory Douglas, they pop up once in a while for $10, $15. Appendix A of the first edition of this book is the Operation Zipper document. And this one, I had James Files autograph it and put his thumbprint in it like he does for his books. And we'll give the website where people can buy James Files' book pretty soon. This was published, the first copy, I want to say it's 2002. Yeah, first edition by Gregory Douglas, published in 2002. So this has been out there 23 years. and people, and it's
except it's hard to get a hold of. And you mentioned to me that if you try to go look at the digital version of the book, the appendix isn't there.
That's correct. It's not in there. So they're doing everything they can to cover up this document. If the 80,000 pages that have just been released about JFK included just the first 5 pages of the Operation Zipper document, everyone would know that the CIA killed John F. Kennedy, period.
Yeah.
It was a government plan. And there were a lot of people. Really the pathetic thing about this whole thing is in the cleanup operations, there are people that estimate as many as 300 people that were witnesses or heard about it or knew about it. And I know who some of them are, and I know how they died. And if I can tell you, if President Trump would be courageous enough to give James Files total immunity from prosecution, just like they gave Sammy the Bull Gravano, immunity from prosecution for 19 murders so that they could take down, John Gotti. If they would give James Files immunity, he could testify before Congress. And he's not in good shape right now. And I don't know how much longer he's going to live. He even told me himself, he's got some issues that he's really concerned about. And he's doing the best he can. But I can tell you, he needs to receive, what's her name? Anna Paulina Luna, her committee. They need to engage with him immediately, get him immunity, and they can get him on tape. He doesn't like being on video now because, he'll be interviewed. In fact, we can call him during this show if you want at some point. He knows that I'm going to be on it tonight. And if he's not sleeping, he'll answer the phone. And we can talk to him if you've got any specific questions later on in the call. I usually call him in the evenings. And he calls me virtually every day right at 12 noon. But he will testify, and he would tell you a lot of things, not just John F. Kennedy, but other things that people want to know, what has happened to our country. And this is an opportunity. No president before President Trump has had the guts to make the changes that they're making now to make our country, to stop, wasting billions of dollars and, getting rid of the government waste we don't need, all these big government bureaucracies that don't do a damn thing for our kids, like the Department of Education. Let's say 10% of the Department of Education did something useful for the kids. Well, they could create another office after they find that shortcoming is needed again. But the 90% that they got rid of is doing this country a great benefit. You know what I mean? And I don't want to, blow smoke up, President Trump's skirt or anything, but he's a great man, and he's got great people working for him. Robert F. Kennedy and Bondi, Kash Patel, they could fix a lot of things.
Let's take a moment real quick here, folks. Look, there's something that you can do that will help to get this kind of information to them. And that is to repost the link for tonight's show and add Representative Paulina Luna to it, and tag Trump, tag Kash Patel, tag Dan Bongino, tag Bondi, all of them. Because the fact is that what we're going to talk about tonight, look, everybody has known for a long time that the CIA was involved in JFK's murder. I mean, that has been the rumor going back all the way, to the beginning.
It's not a rumor.
But what you're going to find out is about the FBI's involvement, about the Joint Chiefs of Staff's involvement, which is the Pentagon, and other people that were involved. It's just mind-boggling. And what it really does is, I think it calls into question, because what you see when we go through these documents in detail, you're going to see a pattern that has repeated itself over and over and over again, including the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, including the assassination of Seth Rich and others. I think, it's pretty obvious that they're not going to do the dirty work themselves. They're going to hire outside, thugs and criminals and gang members and mobsters, because it gives them plausible deniability. If somebody gets caught and they squeal, who's going to believe a criminal? So I think there's a lot of really interesting information that's going to come out tonight. Like I said, it's going to make you start thinking about all of these different scenarios. And before you know it, you're going to be questioning everything. So please repost and please tag in this, whoever you think needs to hear this, because I think this information is going to need to get out, and they need to reach out to James Files. They need to interview him. Trump's the president of the United States. He could pardon him. He could, protect him against prosecution, whatever. But the fact is that this information's out there, and but it has been kept from the American people, and it should not be kept from them any longer. And by Trump's own words, he said that he wanted everything involving the JFK assassination declassified, everything. So you guys are going to find out some really interesting stuff tonight. So up here on the screen here is the book that was written by Pamela J. Ray with James File. And this is the book that gives a lot of detail into his role as the shooter from the grassy knoll, the one that actually fired the shot that killed JFK. And there's some other interesting information. One of the things that I was hoping, Jim, that you might be able to talk about is there was James had talked about when he had ordered up the bullets. He had special order bullets made that had mercury in them.
That's right.
And that was information that wasn't necessarily public in any of the autopsy and information that came out. Tell me about that and what you were telling me about the watch.
Okay, so one of the things that proves, a lot of people need a standard of proof to them about James Files is, what can he say? There's things that when it comes to a murder case in a police investigation, what you want to do is try to see if the person you suspect that committed it knows things that only the murderer would know. Okay. Only the killer, in this case, assassin. James was a black ops assassin for the CIA for 28 years. He killed a lot of people. John F. Kennedy was the tip of an iceberg, literally. All right. He had a friend that was an armorer for the Chicago Mafia. He was a former Marine and armorer named George Calora. And there's a really interesting twist to this story. George Calora's nickname was Wolfman. Okay. And in 1962-ish, early 63, David Atlee Phillips, CIA officer, deputy director David Atlee Phillips, issued a Remington XP100 bolt-action single-shot pistol with a scope to James Files for him to use in his missions, plural, okay? When he shot John F. Kennedy with an Remington XP100, very, very similar to this one, except it had a wooden stock. And I'll show you one. The one I just showed you has James's autograph on it. But the one he used to kill John F. Kennedy had a wooden stock like this one with finger grooves in the pistol grip right here. There were finger grooves. And George Calora, I don't know, this stock on this gun, the original brown plastic Zytel stock, like in that picture, there's a little trick to taking this gun apart down there near the trigger. And I think possibly maybe George damaged that stock and then put the wooden stock on it, but I don't know that. But for some reason, George modified it and put a custom wooden stock that had finger grooves on the grip for James. Okay. When James killed John F. Kennedy with that Remington XP100, it was the third assassination he had used that pistol for, working for Major General Ed Lansdale. He was the CIA rep. He wore the uniform of an Air Force Major General, but he was CIA to the hilt. He was involved in all kinds of stuff, overthrowing like Guatemala and all that stuff. Anyway, and the Philippines, and starting the Vietnam War, the Maddox incident, all that kind of stuff, those false flag things. But the wristwatch, George Calora, James asked for what he called killer rounds. He said, I don't want any ricochets. Remington used to make, I've got a box of them over there on the mantle. a vintage box of 221 Fireball rounds, and the bullet was a 50 grain bullet. Okay. And the round was just a kind of a little varmint bullet, like, a little soft pointed bullet. But to prevent a ricochet, George Calora, or his nickname was, call sign was Wolfman, made 6 mercury-filled rounds. And mercury is a little lighter than lead, so the bullets would have gone a tad faster, but he loaded them at a velocity so they wouldn't come apart. And if people I don't want to explain it now, but you can make bullets. It's pretty easy. All you need is a bullet die and the materials, a copper jacket, J4 copper jacket, a lead wire, and you can run it up in there and just pull a press down like you load bullets, like hand loading bullets. You can run it up in a die and make a bullet. It's really easy to do. I know high school kids do it. A friend of mine had a bullet company. Burger Bullets started off, with high school kids out in wherever they were, Arizona, New Mexico, or whatever it is. And after school, they were coming to his house and making those bullets. But anyway, George Calora made those custom bullets, and they were full of mercury. Let's see if I can get the glare off this book. And this book is called The Inheritance. It was written by, they have pseudonyms, Christopher and Michelle Fulton. It really was written by the illegitimate son of Robert F. Kennedy. That's not his real name. It's not Christopher Fulton. But this book, The Inheritance, is a historical account of the track that the Cartier wristwatch that JFK was wearing the day of the assassination. And there was something either of the first shot from Nicoletti, if it hit him in the back, or the shot that people say was a throat shot. But for whatever reason, after he was hit the first time, you can see in the Zapruder film, John F. Kennedy raises his hands to his throat like this, and it exposed the wristwatch. Shortly after that, James Files took the killing shot from the grassy knoll, and when he fired the shot from about 8 feet from the corner, right behind the picket fence, back then the fence was on the closer to it was on the other side of the trees that it's on right now. It's been moved back. The shot at the time was 29.3 yards. And when James took the shot and hit Kennedy in the temple, it was with a mercury bullet. And it caused his head basically to kind of explode. And a big chunk of it went back on the trunk. And you'd see Jackie almost try to climb out of the car to get that chunk of his head off the trunk lid. Well, anyway, years later, this wristwatch went through the family from JFK to RFK, and then it ended up at RFK's illegitimate son, okay? And it ended up being sold at auction for $1 million. And they didn't know what those little silver specks on the wristwatch were. It turns out they were mercury. So this proves that when his hands were up to his throat and this wristwatch was exposed, when that bullet hit his head and that mercury splashed everywhere, there would have been mercury in the car. There would have been mercury on Jackie's dress. There would have been on JFK's clothes, inside his cranium, embedded in all the brain matter and all that kind of stuff. Nobody knew except George Calora and James Files that bullet was full of mercury. Nobody. About 8 or 10 days later, James was debriefed at the CIA hangar at Midway Airport. It's a 63 in Lawler. I think today it's some kind of commercial jet sales. But, it still may be a CIA facility. I don't know. But back then it was. And he got debriefed there, and he told David Atlee Phillips that he used this mercury bullet. And it caused kind of a tizzy because nobody knew it but James and Wolfman. By the way, James's call sign is Sandman. And what happened is they made the decision. That's why Kennedy's brain disappeared. And, Kennedy supposedly, he's not in his grave. He was buried at sea in a big concrete box. And they had holes in it so the critters could get in it and eat his body. Sad, but if you dig his grave up in Arlington right now, he's not in his grave. But the CIA had to get rid of that because it was evidence of that. That's the deal with the mercury bullet.
Wow.
Now, here's another key point about that. It's just kind of interesting to some people. If people in the audience want to make a note of this, Bob Dylan, the Hall of Fame rock and roller, did not make an album for like 20 years. apparently he knew, and I think he's still alive. Somebody could ask him this, but apparently he knew George Calora. There's rumors that George Calora did some kind of job for him at some point. George did some hit work himself for the mafia. But anyway, Bob Dylan came up with this album, and there's a song called Murder Most Foul, Foul, Murder Most Foul. And that song is full of secrets about the JFK assassination. And after Wolfman died, you know, and years after that, for some reason, Bob Dylan was, you know, came out of nowhere and wrote this new song, Murder Most Foul, and put it out. So you can see it on YouTube. Pick one of the ones that has the lyrics and pictures with it, and the lyrics and the pictures kind of go together, and it will tell you other secrets about the John F. Kennedy assassination, like it was planned. It wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald.
So
all right, go ahead.
I want to bring this picture up because I wish I could blow it up, but well,
your audience can look that up. It's
okay.
It's under, I think it's under a website that's called something like Spartacus Educational or something like that. But it's the only known photograph of the Operation 40 group. It was taken at the La Luna Hotel in Mexico City on January the 22nd, not November, January the 22nd, 1963. And on the left side, the guy leaning over with a cigarette in his right hand and kind of laughing, that's Felix Rodriguez. He's a famous CIA officer. The second guy, and then Michael, recently an interview I did with Michael Jaco, I got these two guys switched around. But the second guy is Porter Goss. He was the director of the CIA under George W. Bush. The third guy is the famous CIA pilot Barry Seal, who was the one that flew all the loads of cocaine into Mena, Arkansas, and was the guy that was killed by the Clintons, you know, or actually the drug cartel sent two guys up to the United States, but they had him killed. But he was, you know, flying the loads of guns. Him, James Files, and others were flying. They had a C-123K model, an old CIA Air America bird that they were flying out of Mena, Arkansas. But they flew a lot of other flights into Texas and also into Florida.
Well, it's interesting. You know, this is one of the other things, and we're going to go through paragraph by paragraph in the document. But in the document, there's this part where the CIA is having this meeting. You know, basically, or I should say, the president, LBJ, is having a meeting with Charles de Gaulle, and they're talking about, and the CIA is in the room, and they discussed problems with drugs and all of that coming out of Southeast Asia. And the CIA guy references in this document that apparently Charles de Gaulle didn't know the CIA was involved in that drug running. So it's kind of interesting. And so the drug running has been something that the CIA, I think, has been involved with for a very long time.
They have. And they, James told me they ran a lot of opium out of Laos back when he was in Laos. During his operations. But the other thing too is, in the Operation 40 group, by the way, let me finish it. On the right side, the first three guys are Seymour Hersh. James says he thought that the second guy holding the lapel of his coat over his face to keep him being photographed was Frank Sturgis, but I believe that's Tosh Plomley, the other pilot. And then the third guy is James. And if you look on their website, it identifies all those guys except the third guy. It says his name. Doesn't say James Files, and it doesn't say Colonel John Felter, which was his primary pseudonym. He went under 33 different names. And when he was arrested by the FBI back in the 80s, they found 18 of his passports. And they said, "Man, who are you?" You know, and they kind of figured out that he was somebody a little more than just, you know, a thug running a chop shop. But that third guy on the right side, that's James Files. So if he's in the picture with the Operation 40 group in Mexico City with the CIA in 1963, exactly like he said he was. And by the way, he was recruited by George H.W. Bush. George was the primary recruiter for Operation 40. And he ran a lot of their operations for years. And, you know, he was former OSS. You got to remember, after he got shot down as a Navy pilot and then went to the OSS. And I think he parachuted into France in a Jedburgh team near the end of the war. They didn't really have time to do a whole lot of stuff, but they were, like derailing trains, and they would target senior German officers and stuff like that. But he was a real deal operator, George H.W. Bush. And the first guy on the left side, Felix Rodriguez, he is there's another picture that he's in with James next, I think.
Let's see here.
Is the picture with Che. And
okay. Let me get that one.
They were sent to Bolivia to interdict the operations. There it is. And that's a really famous picture. Now, if you did see the whole picture, there's some other Bolivian troops to the right of James Files, but I focused on these three guys. The guy on the left, and it's very famous. There's a big YouTube video just about this picture and an interview that was done really well, I think, with Tucker Carlson recently. But the guy looking straight on at this picture, the guy on the left is Felix Rodriguez, the very famous CIA officer. He was originally a Cuban that came to the United States and became an American citizen. He was a very, very close friend with George H.W. Bush, and he did a lot of operations with George Bush. The disheveled guy with the long hair and the beard is Che Guevara. He's the Cuban revolutionary. He's not really Cuban. I think he's like half Brazilian, and I think
yeah, he moved to Cuba to support a revolution, but yeah, he's from, I think, was it Colombia and yeah, I think he was mixed
Irish or something.
Yeah,
but he's mixed race, and he went to Cuba and helped Castro overthrow Cuba. And the guy behind him is James Files, and James has got his Colt 1911 braced right up behind Che Guevara's shoulder blades, and Che's hands are bound. Right after this picture was taken, there was some kind of either a HF radio or satellite phone or something call made to George H.W. Bush. This photo was taken. They call it No Che Day, and I believe it's October the 8th or 9th, 1967. And right after the picture was taken, George H.W. Bush gave Felix the order to execute Che, which he did. And they drug him into the kitchen in that little house. If you do the research on it, there's all kinds of pictures on Google Images about this event. They had him laid out on a big table and everything. But they drug him in the kitchen and cut his hands off. And one of his hands was shipped to Fidel Castro. The other hand went to Langley, to CIA headquarters. And later it was returned to Felix. And along with Che Guevara's pipe and his Rolex watch, Che Guevara's hand is in a jar of formaldehyde in Felix's museum in Miami, Florida, to this day. And I think Felix is 90, either 3 or 94 right now. He's still alive. He has real bad hip problems and he can't walk very well. But he was a hero of this country, but he's done some things. There's a lot of rumors about Felix, and I'm not into the bash Felix club. The CIA guys did a lot of rough things, but he was implicated in the torture of Kiki Camarena, and he has been rumored that he was one of the shooters or the shooter that killed Martin Luther King, and he was also rumored to be the one that shot Ronald Reagan. That Reagan wasn't shot by Hinckley. That Felix was on the second story. You can see the glass window. If you look on the images of the day Reagan was shot, he comes out and he turns to the crowd and waves with one hand, and then turns to the crowd back where Hinckley was standing and waves. And I want to say it was with his left hand. I think I misspoke and said his right hand in a previous podcast. But he raised his hand and he waved to the crowd, and he was shot supposedly by Felix Rodriguez underneath his left arm. And it turned out that the bullet was flat. And I think in the investigation, they claimed that it was a 22 bullet fired by, which is funny because, that was a bullet that was chosen by, that they said Sirhan had to kill Robert Kennedy. But the bullet that went in Kennedy's chest cavity, I mean, not Kennedy, but Reagan, in his chest cavity was a flat disc. And I've heard rumors that they had some kind of special disc gun. I'm not aware of that. Probably the flattened out bullet on the door, that it hit the door of the, but I don't think at that close a range, I don't think Felix would have hit the door. I think it would have gone straight into his body. So maybe it was a disc gun, some kind of special weapon that they used. But supposedly that's the deal. But so James Files is what we're talking about. And, you know, if he's with Operation 40 in 1963 and he's right with Che Guevara and Felix in 67, you know, I mean, if you don't believe with those two pictures, now some people remember one of the mottos of the CIA, there's three things: deny everything, admit nothing, make counter accusations. Okay. So no matter what I say, like I'd say, you know, oh, that's James Files. And they go, oh no, that's not him. We talked to Felix last week and they said that was a guy, you know, like in the picture of the Operation 40 group, that photograph is James is identified as somebody gave some Cuban named Loco Blanco or something like that, which means crazy white guy. You know what I mean? But it was James. And this is a depiction. He's actually wearing a MAGA hat, a Trump hat. This was taken in. He's a big Trump fan. I mean, Donald Trump would, you know, he loves Trump as I do, you know, and he's going to do a great thing for our country, and he already has. But anyway, James is that's at Dealey Plaza in 2020, and James he's a convicted felon, so he can't have a firearms. So that's a stock off a later model XP100. It's black in color. The original, like I said, would have had a wooden stock, but he's just assuming the position that he was in when he shot President Kennedy. You'll see the black briefcase on the ground behind him. After he shot President Kennedy, he nailed down behind the fence and put the weapon in the briefcase, got up. He had a reversible jacket that was a different color and a fedora hat. He put his jacket on, put his hat on, and he said he walked off like any businessman going to a meeting or somebody carrying out the trash. And he said he just walked around the pergola and went to the waiting getaway car. And I can talk through the actual assassination if you want to.
Yeah, go for it.
But, you know, so the day of the operation, it was the two shooters that he knew about were supposed to be Roselli backing up Nicoletti. And they were going to be shooting out of the second story of the depository building. I mean, not the Daltex building. That's the one with the fire escape on it. You want to bring that picture up? That would be okay. But now, yeah, that's it. I think that's a famous picture called the Ike Altgenes photograph, James Ike Altgenes. And when this picture was snapped, the first shots had been fired and Kennedy had been hit in the throat. And if you zoomed in just on the center of the windshield, you can see that on the Lincoln limo, the one in the front, you can see that Conley has turned 90 degrees to the right a little bit, and Kennedy's hands are up to his throat. The Secret Service agents on the right side of what they called the Queen Mary, the old Cadillac, they've turned around and looked back in the direction the shots came from. The shot from behind came from the open window underneath the spotter who's sitting on the second story fire escape. Now there's a separate office. There's a wall between that office and the wall to the right there. That open window that's only open about 12 or 14 inches. Charles Nicoletti was in that office. That office had been prepared 2 weeks in advance. That building was owned by the Hunt brothers. And their adopted son, a guy named Eugene Hale Brading, had prepped that office. They had told the employees that worked in that part of the building that office was being renovated. It was going to be painted and all that stuff. So they moved all the furniture out and set it up as a sniper's nest. All right. The window was only open far enough for somebody to, you know, to shoot from back in the room. That was Charles Nicoletti. That was James Files' mentor, the lead hitman that worked for Johnny Roselli and Sam Giancana in the Chicago outfit. That shot, those first shots came out of that window right there. All right. Now you can see girls sticking out of the window to the right on the second story. There's a wall between those. That's not the same office. Like if you were inside the one where the shooters were, you couldn't see those girls in that office. But you can see one of the girls all the way to the left side there. She's looking in the direction the shot came from. Mm-hmm. She heard that snap of that bullet come out of that window over there. So she's looking to the right. She's not looking at the president. The spotter hasn't moved. Now, if the bullet comes out of that window and you hear a gunshot come out of the window right below your rear end, you're going to get up and go upstairs probably, or whatever. But he's not doing that. We think that's Leo Mercer. James wasn't sure who on the team, but that's the spotter when the limo would have come off of Main Street onto Houston. That guy would have been talking to Nicoletti in that office right there saying, okay, the limo's coming around the corner. It's coming down. It's halfway down. It's starting to turn left on Elm Street. Get ready. And then the motorcade would have come into his view. You see what I'm saying? So that guy's a spotter. Yeah. All right. And the first shots have been fired. His hands are at his throat. The Cartier wristwatch is exposed. Shortly after this photograph was taken, just seconds after it, he was hit in the head by the shot from James Files from the grassy knoll. He was 8 feet from the corner where the fence comes to a corner right there at the pergola, about 8 feet back.
Now, where's that? Is that to the left or to the right of this photo?
You can't see that. That's to the left. The shot came from the left and in front of him. But there's another picture. I don't know if I sent you I've got a really good picture from the other view that I took in 2023 from the street.
This one here.
That's the one that shows the hole in the windshield where the shot from one of the shots from the front hit the windshield. And now James disagrees with that. Okay, this hole in the windshield and the shooter from the front that could have been Marshall Cafano. James totally disagrees, and so does Bruce Brycheck, and I respect them tremendously. But Robert Clayton Buick spent like 4 years in prison with Johnny Roselli, and Roselli told him that Marshall Cafano, unbeknownst to Jim, fired 2 shots from the left side of the overpass, and the first one hit the windshield and went through. I don't know if that's what hit him in the throat, but the second shot, he believed, was the one that actually hit him in the throat. The first one he thinks like ricocheted off the windshield and just knocked a hole in it. But there was a hole in the windshield. Okay. And simultaneously, you've got Mac Wallace, who's LBJ's assassin, shooting from the 6-story window of the school book depository. That one was the cover for the story, that it was Lee Harvey Oswald, who was down in the employee lounge on the 2nd floor in the school book depository. He wasn't even up there. And also the rifle that was used, supposedly, the one that they found was found by a Seymour Weitzman, a police officer who owned a sporting goods store in the Dallas area. And it was identified positively as a 7.65 Mauser bolt-action rifle. And what Mac Wallace was doing, supposedly he was supposed to fire 3 shots, which would have covered the story, 3 shots from Lee Harvey Oswald out of that window. But it was actually Mac Wallace. Mac Wallace was a hitman that killed many people for Lyndon Johnson, as many as 22. Lyndon Johnson was going to be indicted for 9 of those 22 murders. And also he was going to go down for what was called the Billy Sol Estes affair that was involving these fraudulent land deals in Texas into the millions of dollars. And by killing John F. Kennedy and becoming the president, all that went away.
Yep.
So he had a lot to gain. He was actually afraid, if you read the Operation Zipper document, he was afraid that they were going to kill him too. And he was
I could understand why.
Yeah. And the CIA reassured through his next door neighbor for 17 years was J. Edgar Hoover. And Johnson had the purse strings in Congress when he was a senator, and he quadrupled the FBI's budget in the years that he was J. Edgar Hoover's neighbor. Now, J. Edgar Hoover was like a butch homosexual. He lived with a man named Clyde Tolson. That was his homosexual life partner, or whatever you want to call him, who was also the second in command at the FBI. So the FBI has been, for that long period of time while J. Edgar Hoover was there, has been basically a corrupt, homosexual-led, and he was linked to the mafia. He supposedly Hoover vacationed twice a year on the mob's money. And he would say publicly, hey, this is my FBI. I'm the lead law enforcement man in America. There is no organized crime in America. That's what he claimed publicly. It's ridiculous. The mob's been powerful.
Well, it's kind of interesting that back during J. Edgar Hoover's time, right, the FBI was known to have files on everybody. They had, tape recordings and dirt on, a bunch of members of Congress and judges and, important, powerful people, people within the executive branch, so that they could blackmail them to do whatever the hell they wanted them to do. It's interesting because nowadays, under the Biden administration, you had a federal judge that announced that there were over 258,000 illegal uses of Section 702, which are warrantless searches of people's digital data. That's never, ever. I was read onto that program. And when I was read onto it, it was made very clear that if we unmasked something and it happened to be an American, we had to delete it because it was not collected lawfully. And so you could not even use it. And yet they were unmasking stuff and passing it amongst each other under the Biden administration. And the FBI was the ones doing the lion's share of spying on Americans using this tool meant for foreign intelligence gathering.
Yep.
So it's the same thing. I guarantee you they had blackmail and dirt on a bunch of judges, on a bunch of congressmen, probably on a bunch of CEOs of companies and important people. That's how they get them to do what they want.
That's how the CIA and the FBI and other government agencies, and specifically back in the day under J. Edgar Hoover, were, that's the deep state. That's the definition of the deep state, is extrajudicial operations to do criminal activity or to extort people for, money or for, for influence or for, and look what the deal between J. Edgar Hoover and LBJ was what happened to Hoover right after Kennedy died. Okay. Well, his boss was the Attorney General, Robert F. Kennedy.
That's right.
All right. J. Edgar Hoover, after Kennedy was killed, never spoke to his boss, Robert F. Kennedy, again. He dealt directly with the president. That was the deal under LBJ. Number two, okay, was J. Edgar Hoover was appointed the director of the FBI for life. That's never happened before or since. Now, after LBJ died, they had to get rid of Hoover. And my understanding is he was poisoned. I think on the official record, it says that he was like he had a heart attack or something. But my understanding is he was poisoned. I can't give you the source, but that he just knew too much. And about 1977, remember when they had the this was earlier than that, but Johnson was his protection. He was the buffer. And once Johnson was dead, and some people said that Johnson was killed. He was interviewed only just a couple days before he died, and seemed to be fairly healthy to me. I mean, people, it happens all the time. They have heart attacks, older men. But anyway, so but J. Edgar Hoover got appointed, FBI director for life, and then basically at some point was offed by poison supposedly. But a lot of people started disappearing, and then when they had the church committee in a very short period of time. Now I remember Sam Giancana was killed in his basement at about 2:00 in the morning, and there had been FBI surveillance on his house, and all the police and the FBI surveillance, they left for 45 minutes to go get a milkshake or something. And when they came back, turns out Giancana was dead. And the rumor is Johnny Roselli killed him for the CIA. All right. And then Roselli went to Florida. Sam was running around with Phyllis McGuire, a very famous, singer. And she became very rich after this. And supposedly she's dead now too, but very beautiful woman, very talented singer. The McGuire sisters, if you're not old enough to remember them, they were just absolutely marvelous singers. And she ended up being a big Las Vegas headliner and all that, and being just this uber rich. And supposedly a lot of Giancana's money went to her. And I think they supposedly also they gave her like stock in some gas and oil company, which made her wealthy. And but then so Giancana gets killed at his house in the basement. Roselli gets cut in half with a chainsaw and put in a barrel and set afloat in the Biscayne Bay in Florida. Nicoletti is killed in his car at the Golden Horns restaurant. And the only one that's still alive in that small crew is James Files.
Now, James Files is still alive, but apparently somebody tried to take him out. Talk about that real quick. And then once we get through that, I want to get into, we're at an hour now in, and I know people are itching to see see this document.
Yeah. Okay. So basically what happened was James, they've tried to kill him 4 or 5 times. They've rammed into him. He was on a motorcycle and shot at him, drive-by shootings a couple times, and ran into him in a vehicle. But he was sitting at a stoplight or a stop sign. I can't remember which, but he was with his partner, David Morley, and they were up in the Melrose Park area outside Chicago. And these 2 guys drive up in a car beside him, unmarked car, and they just start shooting into his car. And it initiates this gunfight with these 2 guys. Turns out these guys, one was David Ostertag, and I can't remember the name of the other guy, but they were both off-duty, like undercover police officers. And, Hillary Clinton is from the Chicago area. And supposedly these 2 cops, they're crooked cops, they were paid $50,000 to kill James. And they didn't get the mission completed. And James, they kind of won the gunfight. One of them was wounded. James and his partner were both tried for something like attempted capital murder of a police officer or something like that. And he was convicted and sentenced to 50 years. And he was 51 years old. He went to prison. He got a day for a day. He served over like 25 years and then got out of prison in 2016. And that's when he married Pam, and they wrote the book. And, since then they've tried to kill him like 4 times. So he's had a rough life. He spent, I think, 33 years in prison, and they've tried to kill him several times. And, but Hillary was one of the prime, drivers of that. That was his understanding. And that's a pretty famous picture.
What is this picture here?
That's a picture of James right about the time. That's a friend of his from boyhood. That guy to the right is a guy named Gary Marlowe. Gary's call sign was the Raven because he had real dark, black, shiny hair, like a raven's wings. And he had been a trainer and part of the staff. He was I don't know if he was in the military with James, but he was in the Army, and he actually served in the Army with J.D. Tibbet. They were friends, and then they were friends down at the Gator Ridge in Florida when they were training the Cubans for the Bay of Pigs invasion. James on the left, that's a picture of him when he was young. That's the fedora he would have worn when he walked away from the picket fence after he shot Kennedy. The guy on the right is the guy that killed Officer J.D. Tibbet. He shot him with a .38 revolver. Someone at the scene there left brass that was for a .38 Super, a semi-automatic .38. And I think that's to kind of cover up, because there was really no evidence. He didn't leave any brass behind. But Gary Marlowe was sent by Sam Giancana to kill Lee Harvey Oswald. And Sam knew that James had spent a couple days, like actually 5 days before the assassination, running routes and doing recon and running errands and stuff like that with Lee Harvey Oswald. He had run guns with Lee Harvey Oswald for the CIA to Clinton, Louisiana. They used to run guns out of Knoxville Arms in Tennessee. It later became called like Commando Arms. They had a weapon. I want to think it was called something like an X3 or something like it. It was a cheap knockoff of a Thompson submachine gun. It was chambered in 45 ACP, and they were running those guns to Papadoc in Haiti for guerrilla operations in Central America. And actually, they were running them through for a while. They ran them through Fort Bliss, Texas. And James, he had a pseudonym. He was working on paper. He had ID for the U.S. Army of an Army colonel, as named Colonel John Felter, Felter. And he lived on Colonel's Row in Fort Bliss. And they were smuggling those guns from Knoxville, Tennessee, to Clinton, Louisiana. And some of them went to Fort Bliss, and they were flying them down to Haiti and delivering them to Papa Doc, and later to Baby Doc after Papa Doc died. But that was for, guerrilla operations and stuff like that in what the CIA calls the Central Hemisphere in Central America.
All right.
And,
so, folks, the reason we've gone through all this history and specifically about James is because there are, without a doubt, there are questions. Even I was like, how do you prove this guy is who he says that he is? Well, when you see his picture with all of these different CIA agents and all these different places of the world, and he's involved in that. And so part of this was to basically show you who this guy, James Files is, and show you the proof of who he claims to be. I want to get into the Operation Zipper now. And okay. I think this is probably the most, there's a lot of great information that came out of the first hour, but this is where the real meat of everything is, because to me, this document lays out the motive. It lays out the justification, at least in their minds, of the deep state to take out JFK and RFK. It shows you the military-industrial complex and the fact that they wanted war, and the fact that we were going to be kept out of war by JFK, and they weren't happy about that. And it breaks out so much information. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring this up on the screen, and then let's just go through this paragraph at a time.
Okay. You can read it if you want, and I'll just,
sure,
however you want to do it.
So here,
let me show you one thing real quick too, just so that this is the book Regicide, okay? And Robert Trumbull Crowley, a deputy director at the CIA, had a hand-typed copy of this document you see. Was after he died, was funneled from his estate to Gregory Douglas so he could write this book. But I just want to show you, this is the book. This is the cover page in Appendix A. There's the table of contents. And then we could go through every single page, but you just trust me, it starts on page 196 of the first edition of the book. And then you'll see, as we get to these pages, you'll see that page is right there in this book. So these documents, what we're going to read to you now, this was available 23 years ago. Okay? And this would have been public knowledge if somebody said, hey, this is, look at this information. Let's talk about it. It's a New York Times bestseller. Let's reopen the case. But none of that happens because the deep state suppresses all this stuff. Go ahead.
So in here, there's a meeting that's going to take place, a summary of conferences that are held. And it's not unusual. Somebody might think, well, why would you write all this down? Because as long as there's a copy with a list of all the people who are involved, that if one of them spills the beans, they're all going down, and so it's kind of like, remember Comey had his, extra, what would they call it? What's the word they use? Extra contemporaneous notes, So, but this here, it references Operation Zipper. There's a summary of conferences that were held between March and November 1963, and I think it was it November? I think that was when he was assassinated, right?
Yeah, 22nd. Yeah.
So this was written afterwards, and
it was just piped up afterwards. I'm sure that this document existed. It was compiled as it flowed along. You know what I mean?
Right.
They had this kangaroo court. Go ahead.
Yeah, but you have DCI McCone, James Angleton, who was with the CIA, Robert Crowley, William Harvey, Deputy Director of the FBI,
William Sullivan,
and Lieutenant Colonel Cass.
Yep.
Those are the people who were the
Cass
participants.
was the representative for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So the JCS knew about all this too. And you got to remember, one of the primary reasons they wanted to kill Kennedy was he had fired Allen Dulles and 2 4-star generals, Bissell and Cabell, that were working between the JCS and the CIA. And but go ahead.
So it says the removal of the president and the attorney general from their positions because of high treason has been determined by their contacts with top-level intelligence officials of the Soviet Union and the subsequent release by the president and attorney general of the highest level security material to a government that stands in direct opposition to the United States. These individuals cannot be permitted to occupy their official positions. So this was their justification in their mind. You know, just like with Trump, it was Russia, Russia, Russia. Back then, it was Russia, Russia, Russia.
Same thing.
Interesting. It goes on to say that by treating with the enemy on the Cuban issue and actively blocking legitimate military actions against a Soviet-Cuban armed enemy in close proximity to the United States. So you had the military-industrial complex wants to go to war. They want to take on Russia. They want to take on Cuba. They want to, you know, annihilate the Soviet Union. And JFK says no. Says these individuals have endangered the people of the United States and permitted enemies of this country to actively place atomic weapons within the reach of many American cities. Removal by impeachment or other legal means is considered unfeasible and too protracted. Therefore, an alternative solution has been found to effect this removal. This removal is the result of a consensus between various concerned official agencies. And we're going to find that here next. All right. Says here, let me make this disappear. This operation, codenamed Zipper, was under the direction of James Angleton of the agency, assisted by Robert Crowley and William Harvey, also of the agency. So that's Robert Crowley. That's the guy where these documents came from and went into that book, Regicide. The government departments directly concerned consisted of, so these are the people with knowledge, right? These are the agencies that were basically involved in the planning and knew what was going to happen. The Central Intelligence Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Pentagon. So basically, you know, those are the ones who had operational control over everything. But then there's also other government agencies that were involved, but not with specific knowledge. So I'm guessing they probably were involved in some way, but they didn't understand maybe that the president was going to be assassinated.
Some of them did. Some of them did.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you had the U.S. Department of Treasury, because that's who was over the Secret Service, Secret Service Division in particular, the one supposed to be protecting the president. You had the National Security Agency, and you said that there's also a bunch of intercepts that are found there, so that would have, you know, come from them. The Naval Security Group, the Inter-Armco.
That's a gun company in Alexandria, Virginia. Interarms is still there, and it was run by Sam Cummings back then, a famous CIA guy. And I've got a Sam Cummings story for you later.
The U.S. Department of State Passport Division. Following the removal of the president, the new president, which would be LBJ, who had been fully briefed prior to the act, agreed in the interest of national concerns to appoint a special commission chaired by the Chief Justice. That commission would be the Warren Commission, for the purpose of setting public concerns to rest. I mean, think about that for a minute. This is them admitting that they were going to basically, you know, lie to everyone.
That's right.
And convince them that this was going to be they want to set everything to rest. They had their little patsy, they had everything all set up, and you're going to find out there's even more. There was media people that were involved in this. Mr. Angleton was in complete control of all evidence presented to this committee and worked closely in conjunction with Mr. Sullivan of the FBI to ensure that nothing was brought before the committee that it did not want to acknowledge. That's important. So the Warren Commission was basically a joke. It was completely controlled. It was a cover-up.
Yeah. This document is the smoking gun that proves the CIA killed John F. Kennedy. This is it right here. You don't need the other 80,000, lunch receipts that they printed.
As both the vice president and the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation had been slated for replacement by the Kennedy faction. So FBI director and the VP, they were going to be fired. They were going to be removed by Kennedy. And it says their support for this project was practically guaranteed from the outset. So FBI director knew, LBJ knew. And by the way, years ago, I was driving to DC every day, working down in Arlington. And so I would be, I was listening to public radio and they had the LBJ files that had just been released. This was like 25 years ago, I think, or 20 years ago. And I was listening to those back and forth to work. And I could have sworn I heard a tape recording of LBJ talking about the assassination of JFK. What's interesting is I went to go find that later. I could not find it anywhere. Like I went and searched through them all because I knew what I had heard, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I think they removed it. I think it was one of those things that kind of nobody caught it. It made it out there, just like this document, right? And they had to remove that. As it says here, the vice president came to believe that an attempt would be made on his life at the same time and was greatly concerned for his own safety. As the vice president and director of FBI were longtime neighbors and very friendly, the director has repeatedly assured the president that he was not a target and that no shots were fired at him in Dallas. The president has been reassured, but is still considered very leery of any possible such actions being taken against himself or members of his personal family. One of the primary goals of Zipper, the removal of the attorney general, has been discussed repeatedly with the president by the DCI, and the president has agreed to gradually force him out of his position. He has stated, however, that the popularity of the AG is such that this removal must be performed with care. Now, so explain to me time-wise, when was RFK assassinated in relation to JFK?
He was killed after they killed Martin Luther King in '67 when he was running for president. So they let him live for about 4 years.
Okay.
And when he started winning primaries after he won the California primary, that's when they hit him at the thing in Los Angeles where he was leaving. They funneled him through a route he wasn't supposed to go. They ran him back through the kitchen, and Thane Caesar shot him underneath the right arm and in the back of the head.
Now, was he eventually? He was eventually removed by LBJ, right? As AG.
AG.
No, I'm talking about.
That's Robert Kennedy.
Right. But he's saying that he wanted to push him out,
Oh yeah, they were going to try. Well, what this is like in, they were saying that, okay, after, they killed, remember this document's dated the 22nd of December. So they've killed John Kennedy and LBJ's now the president. And Lyndon Johnson is saying, look, I'll just push Robert out over time. We won't I won't call him anymore. I'm not going to give him any responsibilities. We're just going to, and until he started running for president and winning primaries, did they feel threatened enough? They couldn't, because he knew that the government killed his brother, John.
Right.
So
Folks,
that's when they whack him.
Listen, folks, you need to retweet this show, and make sure and add RFK Jr. to it.
Yeah.
If he hasn't seen these documents, he needs to.
This is it. This is the smoking gun right here. This proves it all.
Representative Ford. Now, this blew my mind. Representative Ford, Republican of Michigan, which I double checked the timing on this because there were 2 Fords that were in Michigan, but the only one that this could have been was Gerald R. Ford.
It is Gerald.
The one who became president after the scandal with Nixon and Nixon being pushed out. So it's insane. A member of the commission, the Warren Commission, is working closely with Director Hoover and reports all incoming information directly to him. So that implicates Gerald Ford, at least it being, a lackey of FBI director.
Yeah, he was complicit in the cover-up. He was part of it.
Absolutely. Full cooperation with friendly media sources has ensured that the public attention has been drawn to Oswald as the sole killer. The president feels strongly that any attempt to portray Oswald as a tool of the Soviets is liable to create too high a level of international tension, which the president feels might lead to direct confrontation with the Soviet Union. So let me make this clear. They wanted a confrontation with the Soviet Union, and you'll see that later, but they agreed to find, another plan for their endless wars because they need money and they need power. The president is not receptive to plans of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that's JCS, supported entirely by the agency, to eradicate Castro and his Marxist government from Cuba. So they wanted to go in, start a war with Cuba, take out the Castro and his family. They wanted to eradicate that. The CIA is supporting that. You have JCS supporting that. But the president said that the president states that war almost occurred as a result of the last military attempt to dislodge the Cuban dictator, the Bay of Pigs. And he does not wish to replay that aspect of enforcement of the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine. Do you want to explain that? What you think they mean by that?
No, it's basically, that the bottom line was they didn't want a communist Marxist government 90 miles from Florida. Okay.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about the Russians putting nukes, it's similar to the whole thing going on in Ukraine right now, because what happened was we put nukes in Turkey. I've been there before. I've flown aircraft in and out of the Air Force Base in Incirlik, and flown all over Turkey into northern Iraq and everything on special ops missions. But I can tell you this, the reason that the JCS, and especially the JCS, does stuff that the CIA wants to do. The CIA kind of leads the Department of Defense around by the nose, unfortunately. And one of the reasons that they wanted to get Cuba back is because it was part of the deal with the mob. Because when Fidel Castro nationalized all their property, when he took over Cuba, they lost all those big hotels on the beach in Havana. I mean, they had millions invested in real estate in Cuba. They had big casinos, gambling operations, all that kind of stuff. They were laundering tons of money that was outside the purview of the IRS and all that through these casinos, all that drug money and all that kind of stuff. And they lost all that when Castro took, Cuba. Yeah. So, the bottom line there was,
apparently they moved it to USAID as their money laundering, venture.
Yep. I think they're running mercenaries too through USAID too right now.
I think you're right.
It used to be United Fruit, Chiquita Banana. That's
where the State Department under Secretary Hillary Clinton, they were running guns through Libya. We know that.
Yeah. And Stinger missiles.
and Stinger missiles, which eventually, took down a U.S. helicopter. So
Extortion 1-7.
That's right. That's
Yep.
right.
Go ahead.
And there's man, we could go into so many different things,
I
but
know.
stay on target.
I know it's a rabbit hole, man.
It is. It is. So the president has indicated, however, and this is interesting. The president indicated, however, that an escalation of U.S. military involvement in French Indochina, that's Vietnam and Laos, is not unreasonable. So LBJ basically is getting pressure from the CIA and from the Joint Chiefs of Staff to start a war with communists. He says no to Cuba, but he says, but I'm okay with Vietnam. Reports given to him by the agency as well as the JCS on the subject have been well received. Now, I want to just take a moment here and just grasp with me this question. If JFK had not been assassinated and we had not gone to war with Vietnam, how many more Americans would be alive today? I mean, this is just absolutely insanity.
I can answer that question a little bit. To start off with, it's around 60,000 that were killed in the war. And then there was thousands that committed suicide. And then you had a couple, probably 100,000, 200,000 that came home with no arms, no legs, they're, all kinds of serious life-altering injuries, who then also committed suicide because they or ended up homeless or whatever, stuff like that. I can tell you one of the biggest things that bothers me about our government right now is you're seeing this fraud, waste, and abuse that Elon Musk is uncovering and Donald Trump is trying to change and fix. And they're giving millions of dollars for some kind of goofy study in Guatemala about LGBTQ, koala bears or some crazy stuff like that, that I think it's a couple guys at the State Department smoking weed going, hey, what's the next cover operation we're going to do? Hey, let's do LGBTQ, cartoon books in Guatemala, or something like that. And that money could take homeless veterans off the street, guys that bled and gave their limbs to this country, Marines that came home, eyes knocked out, stuff. One of my heroes, Cleve McClary, came home missing an arm, missing one eye, Christian missionary, drove around hundreds of millions of miles in a bus, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ to people. And Cleve is, to me, is right on the top of my heroes list. But he came home, with a silver star. And if he hadn't had, his beautiful wife, Deanna, and his, all that kind of stuff, and his Christian faith, I don't know what would have happened to Cleve. But I can tell you, all this money we're pissing away in this fraud and waste and abuse and stuff like that's going on in our government, when we could be taking care of, why does Tunnels for Towers need to be buying, wounded veterans houses when we give billions of dollars to Ukraine for them to piss away in some kind of worthless war, when we could put wounded veterans in a nice home that's made for handicapped folks, that kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. It's a good thing I'm not the the dictator in the United States, because I'd be doing exactly what Trump's doing. I mean, he needs to get rid of all this fraud and then actually help the people that need it. The Department of Energy pissing away billions of dollars, and the kids need help in school. You know what I mean? We spend so much money, but it's being wasted on government programs. But anyway, hey, I think the whole thing, going back a little bit on the Monroe Doctrine, that was it was a proclamation in 1823 that basically said that the United States was going to dominate its geographic area, that they weren't going to let European influences or anything like that. So basically it's, you're not going to come put nukes in our backyard. That's the reference to the Monroe Doctrine. That's, I think, the bottom line, to that.
So it goes on to say that the president's aide, Jenkins, has also supported this idea, and the Secretary of Defense has come down strongly in favor of it. So this is the idea of going to war with Vietnam.
Yeah.
The president, for every Vietnam vet that is out there, I'm sorry. Sorry that your country led you into a bullshit war to
Yep.
see your brothers in arms killed. Look, I served the Army. Jim, you were the Marine Corps, right?
Yes, sir.
I love this country, but this kind of stuff, these bastards, if any of these guys, there are still people that have this ideology, that believe that they have a right to completely disregard the vote of the people. We saw that in 2020 when they stole an election.
Yep.
We've seen this, at other times as well, like the JFK assassination, and now I think even Nixon. I think him getting removed, I think that was also a deep state plot. Seems pretty obvious to me.
It was.
By the way, talk about that for real quick, about James File talking about Watergate.
Okay, James was in the car with, and I think I misspoke on this one on one of Michael Jacob's thing. I said it was Frank Sturgis, but actually there was a team. What they were trying to do, the burglary itself was twofold. There were two teams. The first team that went in was going to be compromised, and they were going to be arrested. And 5 of the 6 guys, I believe, it was E. Howard Hunt, who was involved in the Chappaquiddick thing. He was in Mexico City. He was involved in the JFK thing a little bit. Him, Frank Sturgis, Ted Colson, G. Gordon Liddy, like 5 of the 6 guys arrested at Watergate were CIA employees. And what the deal was is they were going to blame it on Nixon. They were his plumbers and doing special ops for him. And they were burglarizing the Democratic National Headquarters, right, at the Watergate, right? So, and it's what they used, what the CIA used, and the press and everything. Instead of killing Nixon, they threw him out of office. They forced him to go out, and then they put their man that they could control, who was who? Not George, but Gerald Ford, right?
Gerald Ford.
He was in the cover-up, right? So they put Gerald Ford in as president, right?
Yeah,
so,
and no surprise too. Isn't it interesting that and we now know how it works, because of obviously seeing Trump in his first term and then seeing him in his second term, totally two different ways in terms of how his staff got selected, right? Yep. In his second term, he's obviously picking people that he knows he can trust, people that he knows are patriots and that are not part of the establishment. Whereas in his first presidency, I'm sure he was advised to pick, Mike Pence. And it turns out that Mike Pence's own wife had, her Secret Service detail was spying on Trump and was directly involved. I think Dan Bongino exposed some of that. But I mean, these people, I have to believe that Mike Pence would have been a Gerald Ford. He would have been a guy who would have stepped in there had they successfully impeached Trump or if they had been able to assassinate him.
Yeah, that's what they were trying to do. As long as what they want is they want somebody in the presidency that they can control. Okay, and it's an insider. It's somebody that's paid off, like Gerald Ford or whatever. But anyway, back to James at the Watergate. He was in a car with not with Frank Sturgis, but with Barry Seal, the pilot. He flew a lot with Barry, And so anyway, they're sitting in the car, and Barry asked James. He said, "Are you going in?" And he goes, "No, I'm not going in." He said, "Well, why not?" He said, "Well, I'm not a burglar. I'm not going to go steal their stuff." He said, "I'm a killer. If somebody's in there you want me to kill, give me their name and what office they're in, and I'll go in and kill them. But I'm not going to go in and steal their stuff." And he knew at the time that the first team was going to be compromised because he was part of the second team that went in and got the video that they were looking for. But there was a training video that was taken years ago at the Lake Pontchartrain facility before the Bay of Pigs. And it was a video that had George H.W. Bush in it. Now, how in the world they got that back? But apparently it was somehow copies of it got into the hands of the Democrats a couple times. And I think they were using that video to try to control George H.W. Bush, or to maybe they were saving it to derail his political future or whatever. But they wanted that video, and that's what they were going after. The second team went in, but James was at Watergate. So I mean, if he was in '63 in Mexico City with Operation 40, and he was with the same guys when they pulled out Watergate and threw Nixon out, I mean, if you can't believe who James Files is, just keep drinking the Lee Harvey Oswald Kool-Aid and keep living your life, in La La Land. You know what I mean? Because it's crazy. I think there's more. Is there more to the Operation Zipper document?
Yes, there is. I want to show a video real quick here.
Okay.
I'm going to bring something up. I saw this when you were talking about the funding and how these operations happen, and we were talking about USAID and all of that. I was reminded of this scene. I just want to play it real quick here.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. I might have to change the way that I make this work.
I'll tell you if I can hear it.
Okay.
I can't hear it yet.
Okay, hold on. I think what I gotta do is I gotta put it in to a different way. Hold on. Yeah. I'll come back to it. But basically, this is when they find out that that Area 51, the president in the movie Independence Day, the president finds out Area 51's got this like massive laboratory and all of this money they're spending and everything. He goes, how's all this funded? And the dad goes, well, you don't really think that they're buying golden hammers and golden toilet seats, do you?
Yeah.
And right. for $1,000 a pop.
Yeah.
The truth is, what you were talking about with USAID, what's disturbing about it all is that all of these crazy programs that we hear about, those programs might not even exist.
That's right.
It probably is just a front.
For the money.
Money going into some sort of black ops, special ops program that has to be off book, and which is really the CIA overthrowing countries and assassinating leaders and in this case the president of the United States.
Yeah, I was working with some of the USAID guys in northern Iraq, and they were trucking stuff from Turkey. They're buying it in Turkey and trucking it into Zaku, right on the border of Iraq and Turkey. And I've got photographs. I can't get to them now. Next time we do a show, I'll share them. But they're convoys of tractor trailers 2 miles long, both sides of the roads, of flatbed trailers loaded with everything you can think of that the people would need: toothpaste, food, water, bottled water, everything that we were hauling into the Kurds. And these USAID guys were dealing like, in sea bags full of trash. I mean, cash, trash. Might as well be trash. It looked like trash bags, but they had so much cash and they were buying stuff. And in the middle of that, I met a guy that spoke 6 different languages who had an uncle that sold, was a rug dealer. And I wanted a Persian rug. And we got this guy and my squadron, if there's any of my old buddies from HMM 264, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel at the time, he ended up being a Colonel, Joe Burtis. We had a rug dealer come into our compound, and we all bought these Persian rugs for like a song. And we didn't use any U.S. cash or anything like that. But I literally bought, and it's in my dining room right now, this big, beautiful blue Persian rug that here in the United States it had been $10,000. But I bought it for $900, but it went in like Turkish lira or something. I think that's the currency back then. And literally on the side of a dirt road in northern Iraq, I used my MasterCard to buy this rug that he agreed. He told me it was the exchange rate. It was about $900. And I rolled it up and it came back with me. But here's the point. On my bill, the conversion rate, it was like 2.4 million lira. So on my MasterCard bill that next month that came out, it said 2.4 million that I owed. I was like, oh no, but it was $900. But that shows you what you can get if you got cash.
Yeah.
And it it was, we couldn't buy Iranian rugs back then. I think they were like boycotted or something. But I bought this nice Iranian Persian rug on the side of the road in Iraq with a credit card.
So this document, the last paragraph here is kind of interesting. It says the president believes that his occupancy of the White House is due to the death of his predecessor and has a desperate desire to achieve a degree of legitimacy. So LBJ is concerned that people are saying, oh, he's only president because his predecessor was assassinated.
Yeah.
And so he wants legitimacy. So this is the next part to that, which is just shocking. But it's shocking, but it's not. He has been advised that a wartime president is always assured of re-election. For example, Wilson, Roosevelt, but only in the event that the war is prosecuted with vigor and has attendant military successes. So they're playing, they're playing LBJ.
Yep.
To get themselves into a war. They really want this war. On a related topic, now this is where this was interesting. And by the way, this is how you know this is a legit document, because why else would they throw something like this that just seemed kind of like random in there? Because they're talking about actual events that happen, and they don't always happen concentrically in the way that you would think. Like if it only talked about the assassination, that would be one thing, but they talk about other stuff. So they talk about war. They're talking about, Vietnam and trying to get us in there. On a related topic, the French president de Gaulle, while in Washington for the late president's funeral, held several conferences with the new president as well as other officials, to include the agency, which, just like when I worked at the FBI, everybody calls it the Bureau who work there. They don't call it the FBI. People at the CIA, they call it the agency. And the general stated several times, and with some asperity, that he had been the object of a number of assassination attempts in the past, some going back to the war, and that he had grown tired of them. He stated that the OAS, and the OAS was it's a French term, but it basically was an organization, an anti-government organization that was attempting to, overthrow de Gaulle. That they had made many attempts to shoot him or bomb him, and their attempts to shoot him or bomb him had been known to members of the agency, the CIA, who had, in at least one case, assisted the OAS assassins. So he's basically telling LBJ with the CIA in the room, hey, these guys have attempted to assassinate me multiple times, this group OAS, and I have knowledge of at least one time when your CIA, those guys right there, knew about it. And in one case, they even assisted OAS to try to kill me. The general also stated that he was aware through French intelligence reports that the assassins of the president were French citizens. I don't know where he got that information, but
I have some scoop for you here.
Okay.
All right. Now, this is, even though there's, I hope millions of people watching this, we'll say this one's off the record, right? Kind of tongue in cheek. De Gaulle, there was a French connection with the smuggling of the opium out of Vietnam and Laos and all that stuff, Cambodia. And they, behind closed doors, decided to split the business between the French, that's the French connection, and the CIA, okay? And de Gaulle wanted them to stop trying to kill him, okay, and take the whole pie. But I know for a fact that that big party that was at Clyde Murchison's house, or Clint Murchison's house, the night before the assassination of John F. Kennedy, included some foreigners at the party, okay? One of those people, and then supposedly they were invited, and I don't know if they were French Corsicans or Corsican French or what, but they were these people. One of them was his name was Lucien Sarti. He was a famous like Corsican assassin. And I think he worked for the French a lot. But anyway, this team was baited into Dealey Plaza. And then my understanding is their mission was aborted. And then they were told to go get on the airplane at Love Field. And they were going to be flown back either to the area in the Eastern Shore in Maryland or Virginia. It may have been Camp Perry in Virginia, near Williamsburg, the CIA facility. It may have been Harvey Point, which if you look that up on Wikipedia, you can see it's a joint facility that's used for training. A lot of explosives training and stuff there. They have an airfield as well. But around that is crab traps. And supposedly these guys were chopped up and put in the crab traps. But one guy, and I don't know who it is for sure, but one guy, when he went to leave the Clint Murchison party the night before the Kennedy assassination, was shot in the head twice and taken to a hog farm outside Dallas and fed to pigs. His body disappeared into the mouths of pigs. I don't know who that guy is. I've been trying to figure out who it is, but I suspect he was one of these French assassins. And there was some kind of inside deal that was done with de Gaulle and the French connection before this occurred. That would be an interesting movie if you could find out the facts. But
Yeah, it would.
I do know that the guy that killed him doesn't even know who he killed. He was just pointed out at the party, and he said, that guy right there, when he leaves, kill him. And it was, okay, I'll kill him. And in the parking lot, he got 2 bullets in the back of his head. He went in the trunk of a car, and then he went out to a hog farm. And that's as simple as that.
Wow.
So when you have
I believe it,
compartmentalized,
man. Years ago, I worked on a farm, and my job was to feed the pigs. And these things, man, they were scary.
They'll eat anything.
I mean, I had to go in there with I had a broomstick with a nail driven through it, and I had to use that to whack them just so that they would back off, because I was afraid they were going to eat me.
Yeah, they might. Yeah.
All right. So it goes on to say that because it is viewed as vital that the French become involved in NATO and to assuage the concerns of the generals, guarantees were given both by the president and the DCI that no further actions would be undertaken that could result in an assassination, and further, that the United States would actively support French commercial interests in French Indochina in return for French cooperation with NATO.
That's opium trade.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, this brings into question even NATO and its existence. And I mean, let's face it, they're the biggest ones that have been pushing this whole Ukraine war thing. Crazy. The French president agreed to this, but made several oblique threats to the president about his reactions in the event of further agency meddling in French domestic and foreign policy. The general was reassured repeatedly on these points and is now apparently in agreement with the United States' aims in Southeast Asia. He made several remarks about the trade in opium in that area being extremely lucrative, and states that he has his own problems with narcotics traffic in the Mediterranean area. It is not believed, and now this is fascinating to me, this next paragraph here. It is not believed, and electronic surveillance of the president's lines of communication while in the United States does not support the possibility that he may have actual knowledge. Let me go to the next page here. Of any American involvement or projected involvement in this sensitive area. So basically they're saying, this guy doesn't know that we're actually, involved in the drug trade. And there's some handwriting here, golden triangle. Both the agency, CIA, and the president feel that the French president has fired a shot across our bows, but that these issues have now become resolved. The president feels, however, that the French will have to be watched carefully in the future, that if American interests become established in French Indochina, we had better consider our own interests at that time. In the matter of the Soviet Union, it is evident that they were initially concerned that the removal of Kennedy might be laid at their doorstep, as this was certainly one of the objectives of the agency as well as the JCS. So right here, they're admitting they wanted to get into a war with Russia. That was their intent. Their intent was to basically, I mean, that's why you had Lee Harvey Oswald, who was an FBI, or sorry, a CIA asset himself. I've reviewed the documents that were released where they were in Tokyo Station talking to the CIA, and they admitted to the FBI, to the agent that was now I know was basically probably in on it, but was reporting back to the Warren Commission that Oswald was a CIA asset, and that of course got redacted, and that was the last document that got unredacted before this last batch. And the thing is that Oswald had been involved with all of these Marxist groups and had been over to Russia and all this, and all likely a part of the cover because he was working for the CIA. And so they decided to use him because he made the perfect patsy. Then they could say, oh, look, this guy's a Russian spy. So, it must have been the Russians that killed him. But the president, LBJ, didn't want a war with Russia. So it goes on to say that it has been necessary to repeatedly reassure the leadership that there would be no such intimations in the future, and that in addition, there would be no further attempts to execute any military or overt clandestine operations against either Cuba or its leader Castro. So they had to bend the knee to Russia and basically say, okay, all right, we're not going to start a war with you, and we'll back down off of Castro. In the matter of the public perception of the Dallas action, extensive use has been made of agency connections with major American media organizations. For example, the New York Times and the Washington Post. The Times is strongly supporting the commission and its findings, and we are assured that they will continue to do so. The same attitude has been clearly and strongly expressed by the Post. Now, this is a lot of people have probably never heard, but there was a video, and I think or it's an audio recording, but I think I heard it. Where did I hear that? Where basically, our intelligence community, was going in and thanking this group of, reporters from all these different media agencies for their cooperation and basically propagandizing the American people. And I'm going to see if I can find that, but maybe we'll do a show together on that or something. But this is exactly what they're talking about. It says here, it made, agency connections with major American media organizations. Look, do you think it's by accident that even though I had protection as a whistleblower and was completely under anonymity with the IG's office, but the moment the FBI raids me a week later, New York Times has got my name, Washington Post has my name and my address. I mean, what the hell? These are the kinds of things because they leak to them. They have these arrangements with them. And in fact, folks, I will just flat out tell you, I have seen documents, and I won't name the names, but I've seen documents of prominent professors at universities on the payroll of the intelligence community. So when we see all this crazy crap going on in these schools, and we see these protesters and things that are happening, this Marxist ideology, because now the script has been completely flipped. Instead of going against the Marxists, now they're all supporting the Marxists, because it's never been about right or wrong. It's never been about Marxists or, versus, democracy or anything like that. It's always about power, control, and money. And so right now, it's just more convenient to use, Marxist propagandists against the American people. because it just works better for their whole goal of keeping us fighting each other and keeping us distracted, while in the meantime they're getting us involved in wars in the Ukraine and in the Middle East and all over the world, because it's always been and has been about the military industrial complex. This is what Eisenhower warned against in his farewell address. He stated that he believed that it was necessary to have a military industrial complex because World War II had shown that we don't have the luxury of being able to just all of a sudden create an industry that doesn't exist out of thin air. It was very difficult to do, and it delayed, I think it ended up causing problems in World War II. So they created this industry, but now, and he exactly what he was afraid of has happened, which basically there's so much money to be made in war, whether it's the making of bombs, tanks, and planes, or whether it is the rebuilding after the war, because that's also very lucrative. Remember Halliburton coming into Iraq afterwards, making a ton of money, building stupid shit like, bridges to nowhere, right? Remember the famous bridge to nowhere? I think that was in Afghanistan. They built an airport and then just abandoned it, But all of this crap is just ways of wasting taxpayers' dollars so that it can go into the pockets of these, deep state actors. And that is exactly what Eisenhower was afraid of. And now you're seeing it here right now. And and they've got their claws in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and many, many, many more, I can tell you.
Have you heard the term Operation Mockingbird?
Yes. Yep. And that's what it was actually. Oh gosh, what is the name of the group? There's a group that has those videos, and like it is actually the guys talking to them, from within the agency. So it's not that's not made up, folks. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. It's reality. And in fact, they created a law. They created a law that was supposed to stop propagandizing to the American people, and that was the Smith-Mundt Act. Okay, was passed by Congress. Says the U.S. government is not allowed to propagandize the people. But what happened during Obama's time in office? They passed the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which basically reversed that and allowed for the U.S. government to start propagandizing the American people again. So,
thanks, Barack.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. So I think that's the end of. That's the bulk of it. Like you said, you've got a bunch of other stuff, and that gives a lot more detail. What's not in here, and I have it. I didn't bring it up because I didn't have it in my thing, but I do have. I've got all the intercepts. I have all the communications, the timelines, and those are kind of interesting. But there's a timeline of events, and what they show in here is the meetings that happen between this person and this person on this date. And it goes through and lays out the entire set of conversations that build up to this, that build up to the operation and how it came about. It was the CIA was the brainchild behind it. Then they convinced the FBI director and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and they began communicating with all these other people to make this whole thing happen. But I just want to go back to that question that I asked earlier.
Okay.
Because I want those people that are watching right now, I want you to think about this. To put it in a nutshell, a group of unelected bureaucrats decided to murder a sitting president who had been elected by the people, and his brother, who was the attorney general. And why? Because they wanted to go to war. They wanted to get into a war, and they weren't happy with what was going on. And I think, look, even if they claim treason was their motivation, right? They claim that JFK and RFK were leaking secrets to the Russians or whatever, and whatever. If that were true, than bring it before the people and have them impeached.
Yeah, that's right.
But for these guys to decide on their own that they were going to murder a sitting president just so they could get us into a war in the Vietnam War, which we now know, I mean, that came out, a couple years ago about the, oh gosh, what was the incident that basically was used to get us into that war? Huh?
USS Maddox.
Yes, which was completely a lie.
That was
A
crap.
Total lie.
I went to the Citadel, and my senior year, the president of the Citadel was James Stockdale. He was a POW for 8 years. He was shot down in one of the first missions into Vietnam, and he was a POW the entire war. Navy captain, carrier air group commander, one of my heroes. And he told us, and there are videos on YouTube where he explains he was the carrier air group commander, and when he heard that the Maddox was under fire, he elected to launch himself, and I think an A-7 that night, and he flew out over the Gulf of Tonkin back and forth where the USS Maddox was, and there were no boats out there. There was no attack. It was a complete lie. Now you got Stockdale is the epitome of integrity. He led the POWs in the Hanoi Hilton for 8 years. He Naval Academy guy, Congressional Medal of Honor winner, the whole thing. And he was interviewed, and he said the Maddox incident was complete crap. And when he heard that they were going to war over this thing, he said, well, the video is available on YouTube. He says, here we go. It's over nothing. We're doing that. It never happened. And so the whole USS Maddox incident was not some screw up by an enlisted radar operator on the USS Maddox. It was a CIA operation, probably run by Ted Shackley and General Ed Lansdale as a false flag operation. You know, they had these gunboats that were probably CIA maritime branch at the time that came up and acted like they fired at the, or got on the radar and moved along and stuff like that. But the night that the USS Maddox incident, they claimed it was occurring, it was crap. It never occurred. And then Lyndon Johnson knew it, and we went to war. It was just the way the CIA started the war. That's all it is. I think you're muted.
Sorry, here's the actual reality of what that translates to. There are historians and research that have, generally estimated that the total number of deaths encompassing military personnel and civilians on all sides, it ranges between 1.5 million and 3.5 million. Think about that number for a minute, and how many people died because of these bastards that wanted to get us in a war. It wasn't just about killing JFK. It was about killing, could be 3.5 million people.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
And some of that's justified to them, I think, under what they call is population control, because they say that the earth is overpopulated and we're going to basically use all our assets up, and that too many people is not a good thing. And the war helps solve that problem. But that's crazy.
Yeah, it's exactly the same crap that we see with, the COVID crap. And we find out we were the ones actually financing and funding the gain of function testing that was going on in China. So, which, by the way, that brings up a whole nother issue too that I thought was kind of interesting. My brother-in-law reached out to me about a year ago. He had a contract come across him, and it had a cyber security piece to it. And this was a client of his, and so he recommended me, and they sent me this. It was a request for information, which is basically before there's a request for proposal, they send out a request for information to different companies to give information on what they think is going to be needed for a particular project. And this project, it revealed a lot of information that you could easily piece together what was going on. But it was through the nuclear Disarmament Fund, NDF, and what it was funding was a project that involved laboratories that work with highly infectious diseases all around the world. And in this particular project, this was being done in Chile. It was hundreds of millions of dollars. They were looking at basically networking a bunch of these labs together in Chile, and they wanted the cyber portion of it was to ensure security between the labs, and the other thing that they wanted was they wanted a rapid they wanted to have the ability to rapidly take down the lab, like, completely sanitize it within minutes. So this was what the project was all about, and this is a document that you can go and find. It's out there, but I was looking at this, and there were some interesting things that it said in there. It said that their funding is done in such a way that they don't answer to Congress. They're able to work outside of the Constitution. It says that in the document. They have 0-day funding. Okay, meaning, most contracts, you get money, and at the end of the year, if you don't spend that money, you have to give it back. Well, in this case, their money just keeps accumulating. So I'm looking at this going, oh, this is where our money's going. And, and this came about right after, of course, Russia entered into the Ukraine and basically went straight for all of these biological labs and took them out. What was very disturbing about this document is it said that they were doing this in Chile as a pilot, and if successful, they wanted to expand this to their other partners around the world. So this kind of crap is going on all over the place, not just in the Ukraine. It's going on in Chile, Vietnam. The deep state is actively engaged around the world, and it's got to stop. I'm grateful that we've got the president that we have. We need to be praying for him and for his staff every day, because he has a almost insurmountable job of rooting these people out. And then once they've been rooted out, they need to be brought to justice. If any of them still around, those people need to be in jail. They need to be prosecuted. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, they need to be hung is what they need to be.
Yep. All right. If you have children, I'm going to show a couple photos here that are from the autopsy. And but if you have children, you might want to take them out of the room. This was, do you want to describe these pictures here?
My understanding is that these may actually be either AI estimations of the damage, or that they are like one of them's real, one of them's not. But they're autopsy photographs from JFK. The actual damage to his head, I think the
That
first
looks pretty
one,
real.
yeah, and if you watch there's a video on YouTube and there's one on Rumble where they interviewed the people that saw John F. Kennedy at Parkland Hospital, and they describe, and all of them put their hands back on the side of the head, where he was hit. And they said this portion of his head was missing, like that. And there were numerous pictures you could see, the people that were interviewed that actually saw Kennedy after he was shot. They would say, well, can you describe his thing? And he said, well, it looks like he was hit in the temple and this part of his skull is missing, that kind of thing. And this is,
yeah, because they were telling people at first, I think the media was reporting that, that he might still be alive. Clearly
yeah, no,
not.
he wasn't alive.
Yeah.
The instant that mercury bullet hit him in the temple, he was dead. He never took another breath. And I think his the time of death actually it was a little after 1 o'clock. And that's because when somebody dies, they want a coroner or some kind of somebody that has forensic, a doctor, to say that this person is actually dead. You can't, like in car accidents, or, they recover maybe a child that was a drowning victim or something like that. They don't want a state trooper at the scene going, putting a finger on the throat and go, yeah, he's dead, take him to the morgue. They want an actual doctor to say. And without getting into a big, long story, when I was a trooper, a county deputy found a guy that they thought had frozen to death in a ditch, and a trooper went down there to help him. And he got down there, and they started moving the guy around. He was pretty stiff, like rigor mortis, but the trooper did some tests on his eyes, and they determined that his body temperature had dropped really low, but his heart was still beating. They couldn't detect it, but he was still alive. And he had laid there in the ditch for 45 minutes after the deputy arrived, thinking it was a dead body and that they were going to do an investigation right there. But the guy was still alive. And the state trooper said, hey, you need to get this guy to the hospital. And sure enough, they brought him around, and he was kind of okay. But he was just an old drunk, homeless guy or something, and walked down the road late at night drunk and passed out in the ditch, and basically kind of almost froze to death in the ditch. And they found him in the morning. But he recovered, and he was okay. But Kennedy was dead. When the bullet hit him in the temple, he was dead, period. And that was at 12:30, but they didn't really make it official until a little after 1 o'clock. And I have heard doctors say that they try, there was a wound in his throat, like a bullet hole, and they cut it horizontally, they said, so they could put a trach in. But the reason that they did that, the biggest reason was because he was dead. There's no reason to give him a trach. But they couldn't have a bullet hole from the front. You know what I mean? Because the story was Lee Harvey Oswald 3 shots from behind. So
what was Allen Dulles' role in orchestrating JFK?
Dulles was fired by Kennedy a couple years before all this happened. And this is a really important part of the story. And this came directly from James Feild. He was, I'm not going to talk too much about his involvement, but the MI6 got a message to, they contacted Allen Dulles and said that we want you to kill a person for us. And Dulles is like, okay, who is it? And turned out it was a general, British general that served in World War II. He was on Winston Churchill's staff. His name was Alan Brooke, Brooke. And he was he's called a viscount, he's called a lord, and he's called a general. But he was basically a 4-star general for the Brits. And he was like the lead. He was kind of the Eisenhower for the British. Okay. And in about 1959, 1960, he wrote a book that was his autobiography that was going to reveal that he was in his book. He was going to reveal that the British counterintelligence at Bletchley Park had broken the Enigma code for the Enigma machines for the Germans. And this is 1960. This is like 15 years after the war. Well, the British did not want the secret that they had broken the Enigma code to be released at that time. And Alan Brooke told him, well, I don't care. I'm going to put it in my book, and I don't know if there were secrecy agreements back then like there are now. When you work for the agency now, you got to sign this thing that says that you won't publish a book. It's got to go through the review and all that stuff.
Yeah. Pre-publication review.
Yeah. So, but
hence
Alan Brooke
why I haven't written a book.
Yeah. So Alan is Brooke was going to write this, this book about and release these secrets about the Enigma code and some other stuff. And the British didn't want him to do it, but he also was there were a couple chapters dedicated to disrespecting and talking about how bad the American generals, Eisenhower, Omar Bradley, George Patton, who ironically, George Patton was killed by the CIA as well. There was an agent named Douglas Bazada, OSS agent, was paid $10,000 to kill him. He's the one that set up the car accident. But anyway, so the British wanted us to kill Alan Brooke. And Dulles went to Kennedy and said, the Brits want us to kill this general. And Kennedy basically looked at him and said, you're out of your mind. We're not going to kill a 4-star general of an ally. I mean, how's that going to look? What if that gets out? He said, not only don't do it, but don't loan him anything. Don't loan him poison. Don't loan him some kind of special weapon. Don't give him any support at all. I don't want you involved in that. Well, the CIA went ahead and did it anyway. They killed Alan Brooke. If you look him up in the YouTube, it says that he died in bed with his wife, which is a a tasteful cover up. It was probably a poisoning at a dinner or something like that, but they killed him. And Kennedy found out about it. You know, I mean, if you go into an office and say, hey, they asked us to kill Alan Brooke, and you say, hey, don't do it. And then 2 weeks later, you see in the news, Alan Brooke died suddenly. What are you going to think, right? So apparently Kennedy got with Dulles and said, so you did it anyway, huh? And he goes, well, sir, you know, he's going to do this and all. It's national security, and we have a right under Title 50 that it's the CIA operates under, not Title 10. We can kill anybody we want and lie about it. And so anyway, that's what happened. Well, Kennedy fired Allen Dulles, fired General Bissell, and fired General Cabell. And so that was the end of Dulles' career. However, Dulles had a thing up his sleeve. They basically appointed John McCone to replace him as the DCI, the Director of Central Intelligence. And Dulles was directly involved in the plan to get back at Kennedy to kill him for Operation Zipper. And actually, Dulles, we've got copies of his daily planner. He boarded a Piedmont Airlines flight out of D.C. and flew to either Richmond or Williamsburg. I can't remember. But he was at the farm in Camp Perry in Williamsburg, starting on either Friday morning or maybe Thursday. But he was at the farm that weekend that they killed Kennedy. Now, he hadn't worked for the CIA for 2 years. And he went to the farm and was orchestrating the communications and stuff like that when Kennedy was killed. So
a guy like this is never out of the CIA. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
Look at what this guy was involved with.
Yeah.
He was the first civilian director of Central Intelligence and the longest serving director.
Yep.
As the head of the CIA during the early Cold War, he oversaw numerous illegal activities such as the 1953 Iranian coup d'etat, the 1954 Guatemalan coup d'etat. So this guy was all about overthrowing governments.
Right.
And Project MK Ultra, mind control program, the Bay of Pigs invasion. This is a sick dude.
Yeah.
Anybody involved with MK Ultra is a sick dude.
Yeah, he grew up. Dulles, you got to remember too, his brother was John Foster Dulles.
Yeah.
So
Dulles
one of them was until John died. John was the Secretary of State, and Allen was the director of the CIA. Who do you think was running the country? And the other thing about Allen Dulles is his early career before I think his first post with the agency was like in Sweden or something like that. And he was a notorious womanizer. He had like 100 affairs with different women. And his wife knew about it and all that kind of stuff. But Dulles he worked for Sullivan and Cromwell. He was a lawyer. And so to this day, Sullivan and Cromwell are a multi-billion-dollar law firm out of New York. And they represent the international, stuff like, I think like when they overthrew Chile, they were representing and I can't remember if it was Anaconda Copper or the name of the company was, but we had a huge copper mine in Chile. And President Allende in Chile was going to nationalize that company. He was going to say, well, look, we're tired of you mining all the copper out of our country and not paying our workers anything and basically, stripping us of our natural resources. We're going to nationalize this copper company. We're taking it over. It's not going to be an American company anymore. Well, how long did Chile last? It was overthrown, and they put Pinochet in. James Files was there. It was in 1973. They had death squads. They hired 3,000 cutouts from Argentina. Most of them were Germans. They were the kids of the Nazis that, while we were sneaking the scientists into the United States under Operation Paperclip, the Nazis were running the rat line going to Argentina. And they had kids down there, and they had a big German community and all that. But they hired 3,000 of these mercenaries, and they had death squads that overthrew Chile in a week or two. And they put a big prison down there on the southern tip along the ocean there, Dawson Island. You can look this up at some point, the Dawson Island Raid, DAWSON, Dawson Island Raid. And they had a guy in there named Orlando Letelier, and they wanted to make him a double agent. And James was involved in a mission where they infiltrated that prison. They basically attacked it and overcame the guards, and they rescued or kidnapped or rendition, whatever you want to call it, Orlando Letelier. and he was brought back to the United States, and he was made somehow he was a member of the embassy staff on Embassy Row in Washington, D.C. And he apparently decided that he was not going to cooperate as a double. And they were given the mission to kill him. And some of the Cubans, Posada and Orlando Bosch and James, they used some explosives that they got from the Falcando mining company down there in Dominican Republic. It's 60% nitro dynamite. And they rigged a bomb to Orlando Letelier's car. I think this was it was 76. It was on Embassy Row in Washington. He came out there and there was 2 other people in the car with him. And when they cranked the car up, it blew up and killed Orlando Letelier. But you can look that up, the assassination or the murder of Orlando Letelier. It was a bombing mission. But that was the agency. It was Operation 40 that did it. So
Unbelievable.
But that's the tip of the iceberg, man. I mean, if I told one of the missions, he won't even tell me all the details. He did a mission behind the Iron Curtain, and he got run out of the country by an Mi-24 Hind helicopter that was chasing him, and he got like blown over a ridge line and got a bunch of his ribs broken and was hurt really bad. He did exfiltrate out of the country successfully, but he was hurt really bad on that one. But he went behind the Iron Curtain to take care of somebody on that one. But he needs to be given immunity from prosecution. Yeah. And they need to get, at least at a minimum, get everything out about the Kennedy assassination and, his role with the CIA to kill John F. Kennedy. And one of my other stories about James that's really critical, I think, was in Washington. There was a KGB colonel that was beating up hookers, and they baited him in a honey trap. And James, they captured him after he beat up their contact. It was a CIA asset that baited this KGB colonel in, and they didn't get to her in time. And he hospitalized her, beat her up, and they got him in custody and he was in the back of a limo. And James talked to him and told him, he said, "You're going to turn as a double, and you're going to work for the American government, and you're going to spy for us and all that." And the KGB colonel said, "Like hell I am. You're not going to do anything to me. I've got diplomatic immunity. You can't do anything, Jack, to me." And James pulled out his trusty 1911 and put a bullet right between his eyes and blew his brains out all in the back of that limo. And I assumed the Russians thought the guy defected, but they got rid of the problem. They thought that he was killing these hookers. There was a couple of hookers that had disappeared, and they wanted to use it against him to try to turn him. But there are so many missions that he was involved in with the CIA and real Cold War spy ops that would make great movies and great books. But what really needs to be known more than anything is the truth about the Kennedy assassination.
Well, the reason that this stuff needs to be known is because I believe that, we may have good people in there now, but if we don't fix the unaccountable parts of our government,
that's right,
this could be done again.
Yeah, it probably is being done.
Well, I'm sure it is, but we've got to figure out a way. I mean, I've thought about this a lot, especially I've had a top secret clearance 27 years. I no longer do. I lost my clearance last year. And the crazy thing is that the way that stuff is classified and it's overclassified, like this stuff in JFK should have been released, top secret information is supposed to be automatically declassed after 10 years. Why in the hell have they been able to hold this stuff classified for so long? Because clearly they did that in order to hide crimes. And so the problem is that if they were doing that on this, how many other things have various agencies been involved with illegally?
That's
and
true.
They're keeping it classified just to hide it. I mean, this is the biggest one probably, but it's not right. At the end of the day.
You know why? And I got 2 things I want to say real quick. The main reason that they still redacted some of the documents that came out just recently? Have you heard why?
No.
Israel requested that they cover up their role because Israel was involved, and they wanted Kennedy dead because Kennedy did not want them to have a nuclear weapon. And there was insiders, including James Angleton at the CIA, that made sure Israel had all the stuff they needed to make nuclear weapons. That's one.
Sure.
The second thing too, it's a little change of subject, but it shows you how dumb this can be, how stupid this stuff can be, and how criminal it can be. Guess what? Now, this is confirmed from Eric Prince, the guy that owned Blackwater. Okay.
Yep. I know Eric. Yep.
All right. Guess what the occupation of Hamid Karzai was before the war started in Afghanistan. You know, they made Hamid Karzai the president of Afghanistan. Right. If you read his bio, it says he's got like a master's degree in petroleum engineering or something, and he was an engineer for Shell Oil Company. That's a lie. Guess what he was doing?
I'm guessing an opium salesman.
Well, that's the answer, but it's through his brother. So here, Hamid Karzai, right before the CIA made him the president of Afghanistan, was a hot dog vendor in Washington, D.C. on the mall. He had a green card. He spoke really good English, but his brother, Waleed, was the biggest opium dealer in Afghanistan.
Wow.
That's a fact.
It's interesting because I've often asked the question, why in the hell have the Epstein files been kept secret? It's been going on now 5+ years.
Yeah.
Obviously they know something because they convicted Ghislaine Maxwell for human trafficking. Who did she traffic to? And then we find out, at least in some of the documents, one of the things that was interesting that did come out in that kind of faux release, at first, there was a document that indicated Ehud Barak was one of the people who had been there, former prime minister of Israel. And there's been a lot of speculation that Ghislaine Maxwell's father, he was a Mossad agent.
That's right.
That this may have been a joint CIA Mossad venture there in order to entrap people around the world so they can get blackmail on them.
There you go. I think that's the answer.
I do too.
I think you just said
that's the Occam's razor. It's the easiest, most makes sense answer, and that's why we haven't seen anything.
It was basically a Mossad operation, and the CIA's done a lot to help Israel. And a lot of times, I can tell you, John Carrico, that's was a whistleblower with the agency. Yep. He said here just recently, and several different podcasts, that nobody at the CIA likes Israel. Nobody. They all did. In fact, two of the operatives, they were married to each other, and one was going over for a State Department tour. The other one was going for to learn some kind of foreign language training, and they went. I think they were living in Tel Aviv, maybe, and but they had an apartment there. And every once in a while, when they'd go out, like the one shortly after, because they were declared to the Mossad, that hey, there's two of our embassy people. This one's doing foreign language training. This one is, an actual, an agent, working for the State Department, doing their embassy tour, doing their career stuff.
Right.
And they went out to some dinner party or something like that, and they came back, and all their living room furniture was rearranged, And then they, a few months after that, they went out to some event, and they came home, and somebody had shit in all their toilets in their apartment. Okay. Then the last night before they moved, before their operation was over,
did they call that Operation Goldilocks?
Yeah. But the other thing, I guess, it's just trying to say, hey, we can do what we want.
Oh yeah. I know.
Yeah, but why?
I've seen
if you're supposed to be allies and friends and working together. I mean, but here's the other one. And the last thing that happened was right before the end of their tour, before they left, they came home one night, and the dog was hiding under the kitchen table, and somebody had taken like a hedge trimmer and cut his tail off.
Oh, geez.
Just like, it like bobbed his tail where it was only like 2 inches long. They just took it and cut it off. And why would you do that to somebody? I mean, what
you want to make a point?
Yeah. So that's the Mossad is.
The CIA, by the way, does that kind of shit too, and so does the FBI. I had crazy things. I don't want to get into it tonight, but when I blew the whistle, the retaliation was unbelievable. There were things that happened not just to me, to my kids, my family, that were just unbelievable. And I definitely think that it was, you know, it was the FBI. And not only that, but also they did things like my wife got followed home from a store and from a grocery store. And she called me on the phone and I basically told her, you know, make several right turns and go back and you can make sure and see if they are following you. Obviously, they wanted her to know because they followed her, you know, and obviously, you know, a trained person's not gonna do that. But they wanted her to be scared. They wanted her to be afraid. And she got home, and as soon as she turned down her street, you know, the cul-de-sac, then the car kept going. She pulled up, and I immediately got out, and I said, "Let's get in the truck." We jumped in the truck, so it was a different vehicle, and we pulled out and went down the same path that he went. And I came to like a T section. I could make a right or a left, and I knew there was no houses over here, but there was, you know, a bunch of farms and houses to the left. So I said, "Let's go left." And there was the vehicle sitting in a on the lawn, actually, with several other vehicles of an old rundown. It was basically like an old farmhouse that was run down and gutted on the inside, and the door was ajar to the house, and there was a bunch of men, clearly FBI. They had the standard FBI haircut, and they're sitting in there, and you could see the faint glint of a light from some computer screens, but they were sitting on like lawn chairs. You know, they had surveillance set up, spying on us. So it just, these kinds of things have got to stop. And I think that the way that we handle classified information, obviously some things do need to stay classified, you know, for a period of time. But I think we've got to revamp the way that we do everything when it comes to that, because clearly the temptation to abuse it is too high. And it doesn't matter. Like I said, it doesn't matter if somebody is on the left or on the right. You know, obviously those guys back then, they were on the right, although their lifestyle, from what it sounds like, when you look at it, you know, these guys were bad guys, period.
Yeah.
You know, but it doesn't matter. There is no right or left when it comes to the deep state. They play both sides. And that's what we're seeing right now.
Well, in Las Vegas at that concert, if they're willing to, out of open windows, just shoot into a crowd of people at a music concert for some kind of false flag BS, I mean, these people are not. They're not.
All right,
to me, they're not Americans. They're not. You know, I mean, I don't care what kind of deep state job you have at the FBI or CIA. If you're willing to shoot into a crowd of people to try to accomplish some kind of deep state, you know, mission or something like that, those people should be hung.
Yeah.
I mean, not fired and lose their clearances and stuff like that. They should be.
This is where, so that's an interesting thing too. So it just so happens I was working at the FBI during the Las Vegas shooting investigation.
Yeah.
And because it was such a big story, they had multiple field offices working it. It wasn't compartmentalized for a while. And so all the evidence was basically being dropped into one repository. So I had access to it. So I was reading it. I was looking at the 302s. I was reading the interviews. I was looking at the video evidence and all that stuff that they had. I saw things that, you know, most people in the American, you know, people didn't get to see. And there was something that I noticed that was very shocking to me. So I was also watching, you know, just like everybody, looking at all the videos that people were posting on social media. And there were videos that people had taken of clearly muzzle flashes happening from like the fourth floor, or, you know, it was basically down low, not way up on the top floor where the supposed shooter was. But there were muzzle flashes coming from much lower. And the immediate response of the, you know, the official story was, no, those windows don't open. So there was no, you know, there was no shooting. But yet I saw pictures of those windows open, tilted open for cleaning purposes. So they had the ability to be open, to be clean. And what was interesting was that in the FBI's own evidence, they didn't have any of those videos that showed the muzzle flashes that were coming from down below. Like, it's like they just conveniently skipped all that. They had everybody else's videos, but not those ones.
Right.
And, it reminds me of the Warren Commission. Like, we're only going to let them see what we want them to see.
That's exactly what it is. That's all it is.
And so,
it's part of the cover up.
Yep. And so the other thing too that I thought was really interesting was that I read through every single 302. Like I said, things that most people aren't going to be able to see. And there was zero. I mean, I'm talking no evidence at all that the guy that they claim was the shooter said anything to anybody at all that would give any indication that he would do this. None. Like the guy, he didn't fit the profile at all.
I heard that didn't they say he committed suicide? Or how was,
I don't remember. I can't remember if they say that, or I think they did. Yeah, I think they did, because they found him on the the ground dead with the guns were all set up, and he had this massive tripod set up there with
Yeah, I heard it, and I saw a picture too where there was brass in the blood, but there was no blood on top of the brass. It was something I can't remember exactly what I.
There was other things too. There was a couple.
It looked
people,
like he was dead, and the shooting occurred, and the brass fell in the blood instead of blood going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, it's been years, but I remember there were some other things that were very suspicious involving some people that worked at the hotel that were on that floor at the time that they decided not to interview, and it's like, why would you not interview this guy?
Right.
So, just really weird.
And there was another story I heard that there were people that ran out of the lobby or down through the lobby, and the security guys saw them, and they were wearing their security uniforms, but they weren't members of their security team.
Yeah,
they weren't employed.
Well, see, this is why knowing what happened in this situation, the reason it's so dangerous, right?
Yeah,
for them, even if the guys are dead, because we see these things and it confirms what we suspect, but we didn't know for 100% sure, but now we know. So it causes me to go back and think about every major event. I'll be honest with you. I've never been one to ever buy into the whole 9/11 was an inside job until I started seeing all this crap coming out that revealed that, look, if our government is willing to kill 3.5 million people, okay, in a war, Vietnam, what do they care about a couple thousand?
Yeah, it's true.
So, I mean, honestly, these people are evil.
They are.
They're involved in these kinds of things.
Yeah. This is a struggle between the Lord and Satan. And I'll tell you something else too. A close friend of mine was working for a company. I think he said it was something like Teletex, and it was a subsidiary. On his paychecks, however they did this, he was paid through Reynolds Aluminum. Okay. And for a month or two before 9/11 happened, he was, I'm a safety director for a company that we have helicopters and we build power lines with helicopters and stuff. And I mostly transmission high voltage power lines. Okay. So he was working for this company doing like inside wiring, and they've got a contract to install a few months before 9/11, like in, let's say, July, August of 2001, a 138 kV, 138,000 volt trunking system in the World Trade Centers. So what they had is these crews were going up the elevator shafts, drilling holes in the elevator shafts for what were supposed to be mounting brackets, and then in the concrete floors adjoining the kind of a load-bearing attachment, the concrete floor to the elevator shafts. They were breaking these big holes in them that he said you could put a 4x8 sheet of plywood through. And they went all the way up the elevator shafts and drilled holes in them. And then their mission was complete after they drilled all these holes in all these elevator shafts. And he said they were told to go to like St. Louis, to the FBI building in St. Louis. And it was like the following Monday. They had like a week off, and then they were told to go to St. Louis. So they went there, and they were like out in the parking lot, and on TV is airplanes hitting the World Trade Centers, and the World Trade Centers collapse. Right?
Yeah.
So after that happened, he said that the bosses came out and said, "Hey, unfortunately, our contract's been canceled, and you guys are getting laid off." And they gave them their last paychecks and said, "You can go home." And they said, "Well, what about our tool trailers and all this equipment and stuff they got?" And he said that they told him, they said, "Just keep it." What does that sound like to you?
Yeah.
I mean, and what was with the van load of Mossad guys? I don't know if you heard about that. And they had the I don't know if you've ever seen the picture of it. There's a picture of the World Trade Center and an airplane coming toward it on the side of their van. Have you ever seen that? That's a pretty interesting photograph. Yeah, it's like a moving van. It's an equipment van, and they were somebody took a picture of them, and it was a bunch of Israeli guys, But Lawrence, what's his name, Silverstein, leased the World Trade Center buildings for $14 million a couple months before the planes hit them, supposedly. And he made sure that the insurance policies, like double indemnity, covered terrorist attacks with airplanes. And then the governor of the state of New York is a Jewish guy, was at the time. And this insurance claim, I think, for the World Trade Centers was like $3 billion, but he paid $14 million to lease the buildings. They got the insurance policies changed, and then shortly thereafter, imagine that, airplanes hit them, and the buildings fall into their foundation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, those buildings were imploded. Buildings don't fall like that when you have one hole and one fire on the 108th floor. Yeah. The whole building doesn't collapse like that. Those buildings were prepped, and they had explosives. Thermite was used, I think. And then they cleaned the whole thing up, and the scrap metal and everything was shipped to China as scrap. Did you hear that? Yeah. I don't know if it ever got there. It probably went offshore 3 miles and then was thrown in the water.
So think about this for a minute, and this is so I want to talk about this because this is an issue that I think we're going to have to deal with and we're going to have to face. We have a problem in that there are evil people that have embedded themselves in our government, in our agencies. Doesn't mean that everybody that works at the CIA is an evil person. It doesn't mean that everybody works at the FBI is an evil person.
Yeah, most of them are really good people.
Most of the people are good people. I'd say most of the people are kind of benign, right? They're neither good nor bad. They're just doing their job. But there are some really courageous people that work at these agencies as well that love their country.
Yep.
But you've got some very bad, evil people there. And the tendency is for people to say, well, I hate the FBI and the FBI is full of a bunch of evil people. Or I hate the CIA and the CIA is full of a bunch of evil people. Or I hate Israel and Israel's full of a bunch of evil people. But just like in our own country got evil, they got evil over there too. Yeah, there are evil people within all of these governments. And we have to be able to call out evil when we see it and not, throw the baby out with the bathwater, not accuse innocent people, of evil doing. And so there is a balance, that we got to find as an American people, as a Christian, right? On one hand, I'm taught in the scriptures, those who bless Israel will be blessed, those who curse Israel will be cursed. I believe wholeheartedly in my heart of hearts that the nation of Israel has a right to exist and that they absolutely have a right to defend themselves, and that Hamas is an evil organization. Although some now have said that, there's evidence that they were created by Israel. So whether that's true or not, they weren't created by Israel. They were created by some evil people that are working there. So we got to figure this out because I'm seeing this happen within the Patriot movement. We're waking up. We're seeing truths and things coming out and things being exposed to the light. And we have to be able to talk about these things and expose it so that corruption can be removed, out of our country, out of some of our allies, right? We know that, look what happened with Trump and the whole Russia collusion thing, right? The Brits were involved. I mean, you had the British intelligence spying on American citizens because they didn't want to do it over here because it's illegal. But, so they say, oh, hey, you don't have the Constitution to worry about, so why don't you spy on them for us? This kind of stuff has been going on all over the place. We've got, it's happening in we saw in the documents even that France, right, involved in opium trade along with the CIA.
Yeah.
So it's everywhere, and we've got to be able to stop this and get these people out of there and get other countries to hold their own people accountable as well.
Yeah, it's critical. And if you go to Israel, there's some YouTube videos about this. There's Christians that go over there and with a camera and a microphone, and they walk up to people and say, "Hey, how you doing? We're doing a study. What does Jesus Christ mean to you?" And a lot of Jews will say, "Well, he was a Jew who converted and created Christianity, and he doesn't mean anything to me because he's supposedly is a prophet or something like that." They don't say he's the Son of God, he's a Messiah or anything like that. And most Jews, they don't believe in Jesus. They don't believe, he's, anything to them. The other thing too is for some reason, the Zionist Jews are really not really religious in any way. They're more of an atheist kind of group. Most of them, that's what they'll tell you. But Israel
I would argue that even that word is kind of a loaded word because
which one? Zionist?
Because all Zionism really means is the belief that in the nation, in the existence of a nation of Israel. But without a doubt, there are unrighteous Jews, and there are righteous Jews. There are those that are atheists, and that's the problem, right? Is that like people don't look at me as an American, although maybe some countries they do, and they go, "Oh, you're a Christian just because you're an American." It's not. It's like there's a religion, but there's also an ethnicity, and and that's the thing that is unique to Israel, which is part of the problem why I think they always get they always get attacked by people is because of the fact that the same their ethnicity and the religion are tied together.
Yeah.
But I think that we've got to be able to call out evil when we see it without denigrating innocent people who just want to live in peace and want to have their own nation and not be murdered.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, all of this stuff coming out, it gives me pause now for everything that has been told to us by the media and by government, whether our government or Israeli government or any government for that matter. Anytime I hear anything now, I'm like, I don't know if that's the whole story. Why don't we wait a couple years and see what comes out?
Yeah. Well, my understanding, one of the primary motivations with Netanyahu about the whole thing about Hamas, of course, if you've seen videotape, aerial photographs and video of the Gaza, it is just a wasteland now. I mean, it's nothing but just dusty concrete, right? So, but my understanding is one of the primary motivations for this event was to move the Palestinians out of that area and build a new canal right through there. Have you heard that? They're going to build another canal.
I haven't heard about that. Yeah, but that would be interesting to see if that happens. I mean, we've seen wars, happen because of that's the whole basis of the Ukraine-Russia war. Russia wants, a pathway to port. That's right.
Yeah, they've wanted that forever. The Russians need, because Murmansk is frozen in the wintertime.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this because, we talked about how JFK's assassination, it really altered the course of American history.
Big time.
And, I just think now like about Trump, and if Trump had not gotten elected this last time, or if they had succeeded in assassinating him, just how different things would be right now.
Yeah.
But it's clearly not over. they're still trying now. They're using judges to try to, thwart, him from taking executive action and things like
Yeah.
that. What do you think are the things that as American citizens that we've got to watch out for? And what does this tell us about our country, about how we perceive the world around us, how we perceive the media? I mean, we're finding out, why have they not repealed the Smith Modernization Act? I mean, it's still there. Why did Congress, a bunch of Republicans, mind you, and including our Speaker of the House, why did they vote to continue the Section 702? Why did they vote to allow for that abomination, against the Constitution to continue to exist, for FISA to continue to exist when they know there's been millions of abuses? So I got to ask myself, like, are these guys that are down there, are they ignorant? Are they compromised? What's really going on? And so,
Well, one of the things, to answer your question, just to say, because laws do matter, but I believe really at this point that our government has been so corrupted, and I'm, if you want to name some people, Schiff, Schumer, Pelosi, and they're not all Democrats. A bunch of them are Rhino Republicans. You got a few new people in Congress and in the Senate that can make a difference, that love this country and want it to be right and all that. But most of them are long-term career politicians who have been corrupted by the deep state. And there is no legislature. There's no lawmaking. They're not making any sausage in the back room. Somebody comes in. Watch Chuck Schumer when he comes and does some kind of public announcement. He has a sheet of paper, just like Biden reading the teleprompter. He comes up, and like I'm looking into the camera right now, looking at the screen on the computer. He'll come up and go and read a piece of paper. He's not saying what he thinks. He's reading what somebody has handed him. Somebody on his staff or whatever say, "Hey, Chuck, this is the way we're going today." And it'll be talking about Trump being a threat to democracy. And the next day it's Trump is, colluding with the Russians. And the next day, they're not making laws. They're not trying to make our country better.
It's all kabuki theater.
Yeah, the deep state is walking up and handing him a piece of paper and saying, "Here are the talking points today. Go out and read it, and then go have a whiskey and go eat lunch at the Congressional Club or go play golf or something." And, Biden, he would get up and read the teleprompter and go to the beach with his wife and lay out on it. He didn't even know they were putting stuff through, signing it with auto pen. As far as I'm concerned, because the election was BS, the 2020 election, everything that Biden did doesn't mean anything. And if those pardons for Hillary Clinton and all those others, Schiff and Schumer and everything, were signed with auto pen, they're not valid either. So they ought to try some of those people for treason. Hillary Clinton, they've got a case on her.
I agree.
She could be tried and put in prison or hung, really is what she needs, or shot at a firing squad or something. What an evil person.
There's stuff that I know about I wish I could talk about and I can't.
No, I get it.
But about Hillary Clinton, I mean, I've talked a lot about stuff that I can, but this is not my information to give.
Yeah.
And there's certain court cases involved, but that woman is about as evil as they get.
Yep.
And needs to be put in prison and needs to be put to death, quite honestly.
Yeah, she does.
In a legal fashion.
Yeah.
Let me make that clear for the whole world that's listening right now.
Yeah,
I'm not calling for vigilantism. I'm calling for justice.
Yeah, justice, legal justice.
That's right.
People that are guilty of treason should be hung from an oak tree. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or, what would be a quick way? And, it would be bring out the guillotines. You know what I mean? And but you hear rumors all the time with this QAnon stuff that the real Hillary Clinton was hung in 2017 or 2018, and that she's really it's a clone or it's a something.
There's an interesting thing on the Q subject. I was queued 4 times. So I didn't really know anything about it, but all of a sudden I had all these people following me on social media, and it was great. They were very supportive. But I will tell you, something changed somewhere. I think that it probably did start off as, I think Trump was probably involved and it was a way of getting around the media, but it evolved into something that was like almost like a cult, and it evolved. And I think, honestly, I think the intelligence community took it over, and I think they started running ops through it because I saw crap like what you're mentioning, people saying, oh, this person's been taken to Guantanamo and they've been executed. It's a bunch of lies. All of that is crap. And actually, if you look at what the Q posts actually said, they never said any of that crap. But it's like all of these people that kind of connected to this movement and started, and you had people that I think started misleading people and leading them astray. And now, so I've never been one to subscribe to that. I always have an aversion, by the way, to anybody who doesn't ever reveal who they actually are. Like, if they're behind, if they're behind a mask or they're behind a username and an icon, but you don't ever really know who they are. Then that's how I feel about it. You don't really know who they are. If somebody's to be trusted, then you should be able to see their face. You should know who they are and know that they're a real person, because otherwise, how do you know it's not a bot? How do you know it's not? And it goes back to actually my days in college. I had a friend of mine sent me a horrible, horrible meme back before memes were even a thing. And it was this really long picture. So when it popped up, you only saw the top of it, and you scroll down, and it said, it starts like giving the, basically the dimensions of this like beautiful woman and describing her and all of this, right? Her waist and hips and all of that. And then you keep scrolling down, and next thing you know, you see this fat, old, naked guy sitting at a computer, typing. And it's just like, I'm like, yes, that is exactly what that is, and so you don't know who it is that you're talking to. It's like I get all these crazy, model pictures or whatever of women that are trying to, friend me on Facebook or friend me on this. I'm just like, nope. See you later, FBI.
I remember there used to be a TV show, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was where somebody gets in the back of a cab and they talk to them while they, it's like the cab interview show or something, but it was in Las Vegas, and this cabbie picks up this gay guy, and he gets in the back of the car, and he goes like, hey, you want to be on our show? It's the interview for, the midnight cab interviews, and the guy says, sure, and he goes, so what do you do? And he goes, well, I work at one of these like call-in centers. And he goes, okay, well, what kind of call-in center is it? And he goes, well, it's one of those things where it's $6.99 a minute to call and have phone sex with a girl. And
oh no, I know where this is going.
So he's a gay guy, and he said, God, I love my job. And he said, because all these guys call in, and he puts on his girly voice, and he tells all these guys what he's going to do to them for $6.99 a minute. So the guy on the other end, who might be just some old man who can't, or who some ugly guy can't get a girlfriend or whatever, he's talking to a guy for $6.99 a minute, and the guy's telling him what he would do if he knew the truth, he would kill himself.
Oh, he throw up, but that's kind of how it is nowadays. It's you don't know. You might date a girl, and you don't know what's going on downstairs necessarily.
Yeah,
it is insane, the world that we're living in now. I mean, it has gone.
Well, when did gender dysphoria go from being a mental illness to a sport?
Yeah, right. Seriously,
Man, I don't get it.
Well, hey, I want to wrap things up, and we've been going for about 3 hours. I thought it was going to take about 3 hours to get through all of this, and it was right on the money.
Well, if anybody wants, one thing I'd like to do though, real quick, is give the website on the book.
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick here.
And if you can put that under the thing, once you post it. The book, Primary Target JFK, James Files and Pamela Files book. If you want this, you can get, this is one of my autographed copies that James wrote in for me. It's got his thumbprint, his signature, Pam's signature. But if you want an autographed copy of the hardback, you can get it from the website. It's JFK Murder, James Files .weebly.com. I'll say it again and spell it. JFK Murder, MURDER, James Files, JAMES FILES .weebly, WEEBLY, 2 E's .com. JFK Murder, James Files .weebly.com. And this book, once the truth comes out, it'll be worth a mint, because can you imagine owning a book about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, written, by John Wilkes Booth with his fingerprint in it and his signature? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't make any money off this stuff. I actually have given a lot of money to James and Pam to help them out. They went to Dallas pretty much on my dime in 2023. Hotel rooms, I used all my points on my credit card and all that kind of stuff so that he could go down there and tell his story. And it's fascinating because he was selling these books in Dealey Plaza on the 22nd of November, 2023, the 60th anniversary. And he is the guy that shot John F. Kennedy from the grassy knoll, and the news media wouldn't talk to him. And I understand why now. I didn't understand what kind of a moratorium.
Because they were in on it.
Yeah. If they're told, if they do a story on some, they've been threatened, they're going to lose their FCC licenses and all kinds of stuff.
Okay. I got to just say this because this was crazy. So when I blew the whistle on the FBI's cover-up of Hillary Clinton's crimes, and I mean, this was massive. It's a huge story. It made international news.
Yeah.
The moment that I went public, everybody at Fox News was calling and wanting to have me come on. And my lawyer and I agreed that we would go on Sean Hannity's show because he had, number one, I didn't want anybody to be able to edit. So I wanted to say what I wanted to say and not be edited. Yeah. And he doesn't edit. So we went down to meet them, and I was at my lawyer's office, and he called over. They were going to send a car over to pick us up. And we get a phone call canceling on the night that I'm supposed to go on Sean Hannity.
Wow.
And we found out, because my lawyer, asked a bunch of questions to talk to the producer and find out what was going on, that the call came down from the top at Fox News to cancel the show with me. So, that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah, they got threatened by somebody.
Somebody, without a doubt.
Yeah, they keep track of that stuff. And actually, there's a guy, I had a buddy that was, I'm not going to give too many details, but he worked for the agency, and he had a business card. And I forget the name of the company. I'm not going to say even if I knew it, but he had a business card that he was some kind of media consultant. And he did like a 3-year tour for the agency at ABC. And he was in the studios in New York at ABC. And he basically monitored what was going on. And if there was anything at all that they were going to put on the air that didn't match up with what the CIA wanted to be broadcast, he could squash it. Like he could push the big red button and stop it in a heartbeat. And, but he did that for 3 years at ABC in New York. And wow. But he was CIA, I think it's like, it's a PSYOP Mockingbird job. It's a real easy job, and they get paid, I don't know if they get, they just probably get their government pension. Whatever salary. But
wow.
Well, they're everywhere, man.
Yep. Well, this has been a really great show. So much information, and I'm going to probably break it up, into 3 sections or something, later from when I post it up there. But but it is just fantastic. I always like to ask my guest this question at the end of the show, which is, we've talked about a lot of stuff. So What do you want people to take away from this conversation? If they don't remember anything, but they remember one thing, what is it that you want them, or that you hope that they will get from this conversation?
The CIA killed John F. Kennedy.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I will tell you, when I interviewed James and I asked him that question, his response was very humble. You can tell that he is a man that God has, he is absolutely a changed man. And he had a conversion experience, but his response was that he hopes God will forgive him for all the things that he's done, all the harm that he's done. And I just, I could tell he was sincere. He was sincere about it. He knows, he may not be much longer on this earth, but he wants the truth out there, and he's willing to put himself at risk.
Yeah.
He's been willing to put himself at risk to tell people the truth. So, and that truth is that the CIA killed JFK, along with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the FBI, for that matter.
Yeah, they were all, it was a complicit operation, but basically the main driver was the CIA.
CIA, they were the ones that came up with the plan, without a doubt. Yeah. Well, I always like to end my show in prayer. And, it's interesting, for those that are watching, I knew that this topic, we could very well have some technical problems tonight. Because there are people that may not want this kind of information get out there. And I've had problems in the past. And in fact, I've been having problems with my phone for the last 2 days. Major, and I listen, I do this for a living, cybersecurity. I worked on the other side. So I know when I'm seeing things that look like it's coming from, agency tools, or, coming from, it's not just a fluke. I'm not paranoid, but I know what I'm seeing. And so I was concerned about tonight. I was very concerned that we were going to have problems, because my phones were working okay. And then all of a sudden, as soon as Jeanette got in touch with you, about maybe 20 minutes later, all of a sudden stuff stops working and I start having issues. So we prayed before the show. Yeah. And just prayed that God would help us get through the show without any technical problems, and that happened. We didn't have those technical problems, thank God. And I think that this is important and valuable information that people need to hear. And so I want to thank everybody that joined us tonight. I hope that you will take this information and share it with others. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I want to give a shout out to Patriots Prayer. They are the group that allows me to do my show on their platform, and I had a lot of support from Eddie Smith, he was in the background helping to make sure that things were running smoothly. I apologize I couldn't get to a lot of questions and stuff like that, but I didn't want to give any opportunity for technical problems. So, and that happens sometimes if I got too many screens open.
We can do it again. One thing I would like to say real quick, because I almost forgot. Pam asked me, Pamela Files, the author of this book. One of the problems they run into is shipping for these books overseas sometimes is over $100. So they can't sell them for what they have on the website and ship them to like Indonesia for the price that they have on there. So international shipments, if you want one of these books and you don't live inside the continental United States, order the book from Author House, AUTHORHOUSE, Author House. And you can, or you can go on eBay. There's some sites on eBay, like 6 or 7 sites that are selling this book. And,
Primary Target's the name of the book, folks, by Pamela J. Ray with James E. Files.
And so international orders, they can only be filled through Author House. And then also, if you don't want the autograph copy, on eBay or Author House, you get the same book a little cheaper. But if you want his signature and his thumbprint in it, they also are sending out pictures now. Autograph photographs and stuff come with the book, and but they're only shipping inside the continental United States because shipping is so expensive. And that's all. Thank you. One other little quick joke, though. Pamela Ray and James Files, because of James's criminal history, they thought about changing his name, when he married Pam, and he was going to take Pam's name. But James Earl Ray didn't work.
Yep.
That's the guy that was the patsy for Martin Luther King. So anyway, she changed her name. I guess her legal name now is Pamela Ray Files, but anyway.
Folks, I've been so engrossed in this whole story and talking tonight and listening that I have not run my commercial. So I'm going to do that now. And when we come back, we're going to close out in prayer and end the show. So if you guys are willing to stick with us for a little bit, I'm going to run these ads and then we'll pray. All right.
It says, I woke up this morning and looked out the door to a country I don't recognize. They put masks on our face to hide our pain, and there's no fire in most people's eyes. And it's still true today. It's still true today that they've tried to destroy the American spirit. And in some instances, they've done a dadgum good job. But in other instances, they have lit an inferno in some people. And we right now are gathering some of those people that are on freaking fire to save this country.
Increasing expenses have caused us all a lot of pressure these days, and it's affecting even the wealthiest of people. Most have lost their sense of security, stability, and even hope for a strong financial future. The game plan of everyone in your cell phone has likely been disrupted or even hardcore stopped, and most are looking for a creative solution to regain financial momentum. Oftentimes, life's best solutions are the simplest. But first, a question. What is something most people think they should own but don't? Crypto, fine art, real estate? Nope. We are talking about real money. The kind kings and queens fought for and large institutions today buy in mass. We're talking about gold and silver, assets that provide confidence in tough financial situations. So the question is, do you own any? If you don't, you're not alone. Most people aren't maximizing the power of precious metals because it's just been too complicated. And even though they see advertisements about gold and silver daily, they don't really know who to trust. That is, until now. The bottom line is that buying gold and silver doesn't have to be complicated or scary. There's a simple, better way to accumulate assets and create financial peace, headache-free. And this very minute, a new community of average people are seeing above average results to the tune of tens of millions in assets over the last few years. This system is tested, it's simple, and it's not an experiment. To date, it's helped more than 80,000 people bring hope back into their lives. It's invitation only, and right now, this new community has accepted a challenge to give away as much free gold this year as possible. Curious? Learn how to get your free gold today. Check out the next step to get the details.
Welcome to Shop with America, where the emphasis is on America. Our movement is to switch away from your shopping with the big box stores and the mega corporations back to supporting family-owned, made in America. We've been giving these big box stores our money every day for years. But what's happened is they've forced many small businesses to shut down. We call this the illusion of choice. We see all these products in these stores, but in reality, it's only a few companies that control it all. There are thousands of lawsuits for health damage because they put profit over our people. But there is another choice. We found a better way. There's a family-owned American factory with product integrity. and have always done things the right way for the right reasons. And this company outperforms the big box stores. That's due to their month-to-month shopping club. They make everyday consumer products that we all use and buy again and again, like toothpaste, shampoo, coffee, and organic beef. Go to shopwithamerica.us today.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show. Folks, thank you so much for sticking with us for this very, very long interview. I think this is the longest one I've done, 3 hours and 14 minutes. But man, it has been packed full of just interesting and important information. So I want to thank you, Jim, for coming on the show and doing this interview. Just unbelievable amount of information. And it's just, it's scary, quite honestly, to think that this kind of thing not only has happened, but could happen again if we don't fix the problems that are inherent with our intelligence community. And I think that Trump's got a big job ahead of him. And I hope that he's successful in rooting out the corruption, but also restructuring the systems so that they can't be abused in the way that they've been abused in the past. I always close this in prayer, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Heavenly Father, Lord, I just thank you so much, Lord, for shedding light on this topic that has taken way too long to come out. But Lord, we thank you that the American people are waking up. We thank you for our president. We thank you, Lord, for reaching James Files, Lord, and moving on his heart and changing his life. Lord, we thank you for all of the good people who are fighting right now to make our country great again and to remove the corruption that is within so many of our federal agencies. Lord, we pray that you would continue to expose the corruption and that you would replace the corrupt with the righteous. And Lord, we pray that you would help Donald Trump to fix the systems that have allowed this sort of thing to happen in the past so that they cannot happen again. Lord, I pray for James Files and for Pam and pray for his health, Lord. I pray that you would help bring this to light to the right people within the Trump administration. Lord, we pray that you would bring all this information to the surface so that it can never happen again. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Folks, remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Again, I thank Patriots Prayer for having us on this show and being able to do this. And I want to also want to mention that that there is I also do a Substack on mcpoda.substack.com. That's where I will write articles and publish those about different national security topics, cybersecurity, and politics. And I'm also on America Out Loud Talk Radio, Unleash the Political News Hour. So those are 3 of the different places that you can find me. You can find all of that information, including these shows, on the raisingcainshow.com. And again, I want to thank everybody for joining. Jim, where can people find you? Are you on social media? Is there a way that people can reach out to you? I don't blame you, brother. I don't know if I'd want to be reached out to with this kind of information.
I'm not on any kind of social media. If you want an MD-500 helicopter in your backyard, I am a good guy to call. I can, or you want a power line fixed, or you want some kind of special ops done with a helicopter. Sometimes I come armed. But anyway, if you've got a security problem that you need to get rid of something, I'm a pretty good guy for that too. But James Files and I joke about, and I'm not going to mention any names on here, but if there was any kind of way that was there any evil person on the planet of Earth that needed to be eliminated, before he died. And he said,
I already know who the name is.
and I don't want to reveal the name or anything, but it rhymes with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, you'll get no argument out of me, that's for sure.
Yeah. She's an evil person. She really is.
Without a doubt.
And if you hear the guys, Tanto and the guys, Oz, that were in the 13 hours and were left out to dry by Hillary in Benghazi. It's my understanding that they wanted that homosexual State Department guy they sent there to try, that was a fake attempt to get back some of those Stinger missiles.
Yep.
They wanted to kill him. It was a hit.
That's you and I are going to have to talk about that, because I've got all the connections with those folks. And have talked about that, because some of this information that I carried out of the FBI involved money being laundered through those places, and involved the Muslim Brotherhood getting paid off by Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
So, but that's a whole nother 3 hours.
I know. Yeah.
So we will get together again, and I imagine we'll probably talk again about this stuff, because more and more stuff is going to be coming out, and I think it's undeniable that that people want to know the truth. They don't want to be lied to anymore.
That's right.
So
that's all this is about, is fixing our country. And
that's right.
I do want to thank you. I know Jeanette was contacted by Johanna Castellano, the big mob lawyer's wife, that hooks me up with everybody. And
she's awesome. She's really wonderful.
Johanna's great. And but if it wasn't for the mob and the CIA, I could concentrate on my job right now. So
right.
Anyway,
speaking of which,
we can fix our country.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that's another thing too, is, I had this incident happen where I had my clearance dropped, not for any derogatory, just administratively, because of a mistake supposedly by somebody, which I think it was not a mistake. I think it was retaliation, because it was in the Biden administration in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
But I've been without a job for a little over 3 months, and God has barely, he's been getting us through it barely by the skin of our teeth. But I found out yesterday, I finally got a job. I've had several interviews and finally nailed down a job. And so I'm grateful to God. And I know many of you listening have been praying for me and my family, and I want to thank you guys for that.
Yeah.
So hopefully I will be gainfully employed here very soon. So
praise God. I'll pray for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, God bless you guys. Remember, stay vigilant. And I think if there's anything that I could say tonight that would go along with the topic, is that don't believe what is told to you by the media or by your government without doing some digging. And, if everybody's in lockstep together and they're all agreeing, I'm talking about the government, the media, the doctors, the whatever, right? It's probably not a good idea to just trust what they're telling you.
Yeah.
So stay vigilant and trust in the Lord. God bless you, and have a great night.
Amen.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, the time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.